I'm Eric, 36, and I used to think family traditions were unbreakable. Every December, we'd all gather at my wife's mother's big colonial house for Christmas dinner, the same way we had for years. I'd bring the mashed potatoes, my wife Jenna would bake her famous sugar cookies, and our two kids, Noah 8 and Ella 5, would run around the living room in their Christmas pajamas, squealing as they waited to open presents. It was chaotic, loud, and a little messy, but it was home. Or at least, it felt that way. Until this year. It started in mid-November when Jenna's mom, Carol, sent her usual group text titled Christmas Dinner Planning. It was her thing, color-coded lists, sign-up sheets for side dishes, and a reminder that dinner starts at 6 sharp. Carol ran Christmas like a military operation. Everyone had a job, everyone had a dress code, and everyone was expected to behave according to her standards. Normally, I didn't mind. I just smiled, nodded, and helped wherever I could. But this year, something felt different. The message was unusually short. Just a few lines. Christmas dinner will be adults only this year. I love the kids, but they're too loud and undisciplined for a proper celebration. Let's make this year peaceful and elegant. Hope you understand. Heart emoji, Carol. At first, I honestly thought it was a joke. I read it 3 times before I turned to Jenna, who was standing in the kitchen stirring hot chocolate. She can't be serious, I said. Jenna sighed, already looking defeated. She is. I talked to her earlier. She said last year's dinner was unbearable because of the noise. Apparently, she still remembers when Ella spilled juice on her white rug. I stared at her. She was 4. Jenna nodded, her lips pressed tight. I know. That's when it hit me. Carol wasn't joking. She had officially banned our kids, her own grandchildren, from Christmas dinner. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who starts family wars over every little thing. But this got under my skin. I could feel something twist in my chest. It wasn't just about being excluded, it was about my kids. Noah and Ella had been talking about Grandma's Christmas for weeks. They'd helped me hang lights outside, drawn pictures for Carol's fridge, even picked out a small gift for her, a hand-painted ornament with "We love you, Grandma," written in crooked letters. And she didn't even want them there? When Jenna called her again to reason with her, I overheard bits of the conversation. Carol's voice came through the speakerphone, sharp and smug. Jenna, I just think it's time we brought back some sophistication. The children are wonderful, but they're not suitable for a formal dinner. You and Eric are welcome, of course. Without our kids? Jenna asked, incredulous. Well, if you insist on staying home, that's your choice, Carol replied smoothly. But everyone else has already agreed. You don't want to make things awkward, do you? I clenched my fists, but Jenna just hung up, quietly shaking her head. That's when I saw her eyes welling up. She hated confrontation, and Carol knew it. Over the next few days, things got weird. Carol started posting in the family group chat about her refined dinner plans, photos of the gold-trimmed invitations she mailed out, snippets of her menu, beef tenderloin, truffle potatoes, poached pears for dessert, and even a note that said, dress code, formal. Children under 12 are welcome at the Christmas Eve brunch instead. That brunch, by the way, was just coffee and pastries in her backyard, usually held while she prepared the real dinner, a sort of waiting area for the kids. Jenna tried to shrug it off. Let's just have our own quiet Christmas Eve with the kids, she said. Then maybe go to her dinner the next night. But I couldn't shake the bitterness. It felt wrong. Like Carol had drawn a line in the sand and expected us to bow our heads and cross it anyway. Then came the phone call that made everything worse. It was from Jenna's older sister, Lauren. She's the golden child, successful, polished, and always on Carol's side. Hey, she said casually. Mom mentioned you guys might skip dinner? Please tell me that's not true. Yeah, we're not going without the kids, I said. There was a pause. Then that patronizing tone I've always hated. Eric, it's just one evening. You can't let the kids rule your decisions. Mom's trying to make it special this year. She invited some important guests. You wouldn't want them thinking your children can't behave, right? I almost laughed. You mean like your husband who got drunk last year and broke her snow globe collection? Wow, Lauren said, her voice dripping with mock offense. That's low. Just saying, I muttered. If she's banning people for being loud and messy, maybe start there. After that, word spread fast. Jenna's brother Mike texted me, saying he didn't want to get involved, and Carol sent a final message to everyone. Please RSVP by the 10th. Seating is limited. By then, I'd made up my mind. If Carol didn't want my kids at Christmas, then she wasn't getting us either. But I wasn't going to just sit home and sulk. I had an idea. A wild one. It started small, just the thought of making Christmas special for the kids ourselves. But the more I thought about it, the more it grew. I pictured the lights, the music, the laughter, the smell of cinnamon and cookies baking in the oven. I pictured our house filled with joy, not judgment. I wanted Noah and Ella to look back and remember this Christmas as the best one yet, not the year they got left out. So I told Jenna, what if we throw our own party? Not just dinner, a real Christmas celebration. Games, food, music, everything. We'll invite whoever actually wants to be around family, not just show off for appearances. She hesitated, biting her lip. You really think people would come? I shrugged. If they care more about the people than the table settings, yeah, I do. And that's when the spark lit. Over the next week, I started planning in secret. I picked up extra string lights, found a secondhand inflatable Santa, and even rented a projector for a Christmas movie marathon in the backyard. I told Jenna's cousins, the ones with young kids who'd also been uninvited, and their reactions were instant. Wait, Carol banned kids again. One of them texted back. We're in. 100%. It was slow at first, but word started spreading. People were frustrated with Carol's attitude, and our house, our simple, cozy, messy house, started sounding like a much better option. Meanwhile, Carol was busy sending updates about her perfect dinner. She bragged about hiring a pianist, renting fine china, even commissioning custom name cards. Her messages grew increasingly smug, almost taunting. I swear she wanted us to feel jealous. By December 20th, our living room was a whirlwind of glitter, wrapping paper, and half-inflated decorations. Noah and Ella were helping me hang tinsel, and Jenna was mixing cookie dough with Christmas music playing in the background. I could see her smile coming back, a real one this time. For the first time all month, our house felt warm again. But then, Carol called. Eric, she said in that overly polite tone. I just wanted to confirm that you and Jenna won't be attending dinner. It's quite rude not to respond. I took a deep breath. We're hosting our own Christmas at home this year. The kids are excited. There was a pause. A cold one. Then, oh, I see. You're welcome to come, of course, I added, though I already knew her answer. I'll pass, she said curtly. I prefer to celebrate with a little more decorum. When she hung up, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked calm, but my mind was racing. I had no idea that what I'd just set in motion would turn the entire family upside down, or that by the end of that night, everyone would be talking about our Christmas instead of hers. And as for Carol, she wouldn't take that lightly. Because when the guests started showing up at our house instead of hers, she showed up too. And what she brought with her was something I never expected. The day before Christmas Eve, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing like crazy on the nightstand. Dozens of notifications, texts, missed calls, even a few Facebook messages. At first, I thought something had gone wrong with our party plans. But when I scrolled through the messages, I realized it wasn't that. Carol had gone full PR mode. She'd posted a long, elegant Facebook update with a photo of her pristine dining room, captioned, "Feeling grateful for a peaceful, grown-up Christmas this year. Sometimes it's okay to set boundaries and create the celebration you truly deserve." The comments were filled with her friends fawning over her. So elegant. Love this idea. Kids' energy is lovely, but adults need space too. Finally, someone said it. I could practically hear her smug tone in every word. She wanted everyone to know she was in control, that she wasn't being petty, she was being graceful. But underneath all that, I knew exactly what she was doing. She was isolating us, making us look like the ones who overreacted. Jenna saw it too. She read the post 3 times and then just sat there in silence, clutching her coffee mug. She's turning it into a statement, she said quietly, like she's some kind of martyr for elegance. I squeezed her shoulder. Let her have her moment. We'll have ours tomorrow. But the thing about Carol is that she never stops at one layer of manipulation. Around noon, she sent a group text to the entire family again, including us. Friendly reminder for tomorrow's dinner. Can't wait to see everyone dressed to the nines. If anyone's bringing a guest, please let me know in advance so we can arrange proper seating. Then, almost as an afterthought, Jenna, darling, I've arranged for the children's gifts to be dropped off in the foyer tomorrow morning. No need for them to attend, of course, but I didn't want them to feel forgotten. The way she phrased it made my skin crawl, like she was tossing scraps to make herself look generous. I replied, "Appreciate it, Carol, but the kids are fine. They're excited about our own celebration." 2 minutes later, she replied, "Oh, how lovely. I do hope it doesn't feel like competition. Christmas isn't about that, dear." That was when I realized she knew exactly what she was doing. She'd heard about our party, probably from Lauren, and she was trying to plant the idea that we were being petty. Jenna spent the rest of the afternoon decorating cookies with the kids, but I could see she was struggling. Carol had that effect on her, a way of making her second-guess every decision. Later that night, I caught Noah sitting by the window, watching the snow fall. "Dad," he asked softly, "why doesn't Grandma want us there this year? Did we do something bad?" That question hit me harder than I expected. I crouched next to him and put a hand on his shoulder. "No, buddy, you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups forget what Christmas is supposed to be about. But that's why we're doing our own party, so we can remind them." He nodded slowly, but I could tell he didn't really understand. How could he? He was 8. All he knew was that his grandma didn't want him at Christmas dinner. The next day, Christmas Eve, Carol's house became the talk of the family group chat. Photos started trickling in: crystal wine glasses, gold napkins, matching red dresses. Lauren, of course, was at the center of it all, posting selfies with captions like "family elegance." Jenna tried to ignore it, but her phone kept lighting up. Then her cousin Tasha messaged her privately, "Hey, are you serious about your Christmas party tomorrow? 'Cause if you are, we'd rather come to yours." My kids cried when Mom told them they weren't invited to Grandma's. That message was the first of many. Over the next few hours, more family members started reaching out quietly. Cousins, even one of Carol's sisters. "Honestly, Carol's being ridiculous," one wrote. "I'll bring dessert if we can come." It was subtle at first, but I could feel a shift happening. People were starting to realize how absurd the whole "no kids" thing was. Carol had pushed too far. But then, she doubled down. At around 8 p.m., we got another message, this time from Lauren. "Mom wants everyone to know she's hosting a secret Santa exchange after dinner tomorrow. So if you're not coming, please let her know now. She doesn't want empty spots in the circle." There was that word again, empty. It stung. Like our absence wasn't about family. It was about keeping up appearances. I stared at my phone for a long time before responding. "We won't be there. Have a great dinner." Lauren replied with a single thumbs-up emoji. Cold. Passive-aggressive. Exactly what I expected. That night, I stayed up late finishing the decorations. I wanted everything perfect, not fancy, just warm. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine. I strung lights around the windows, set up the projector in the backyard for Home Alone, and even hung a handmade sign on the front door. "Merry Chaos Moss. Loud Kids Welcome." Jenna laughed when she saw it. "You're really leaning into this, huh?" "Someone has to," I said. "Let's show them what joy looks like." By the time morning came, our house was buzzing. The first guests arrived around 10, Tasha, her husband, and their 2 little boys. They brought hot cocoa, matching reindeer sweaters, and enough laughter to fill the whole living room. Then more cars pulled up. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even a few of Carol's friends who claimed they were just dropping by for a bit. Before I knew it, our small Christmas idea had turned into something bigger. Kids running around with candy canes, adults laughing in the kitchen, music playing through the speakers. It wasn't quiet, but it was perfect. Jenna looked at me, her eyes misty. "She's going to find out," she whispered. "I hope she does," I said. "Maybe she'll remember what family actually means." And then, right around 3 p.m., she did find out. Lauren called Jenna first. I only heard Jenna's side of the conversation, but it was enough to paint the picture. "What do you mean everyone left?" Jenna said, eyes wide. "No, we didn't invite them away." She paused, listening. "Yes, Mom knew we weren't coming." "No, she wasn't excluded. She excluded the kids." I could hear faint shouting through the speaker. Carol's voice, sharp and brittle. Then Jenna's shoulders slumped. Fine, Mom. You do whatever you need to do." When she hung up, she looked at me. Carol's furious. Apparently half the family left her house after dinner started and came here. She's saying we stole Christmas. I blinked. Stole Christmas? What is she, the Grinch? Jenna didn't laugh. "Eric, she's coming here." And that's when the energy in the house shifted. People were still laughing, the kids were still playing, but I could feel this invisible weight pressing down on the air. I looked out the window and saw Carol's silver Lexus pulling up to the curb, headlights cutting through the falling snow. She stepped out wearing a red wool coat and white gloves, her hair immaculate despite the weather. In one hand, she carried a perfectly wrapped gift box. In the other, a small envelope. Her jaw was tight, her smile thin. Jenna froze by the door. "Oh no," she whispered. I swallowed hard. Let her in. I didn't know what she was bringing. An apology, an ultimatum, or something worse. But the second she walked through that door, with every eye turning toward her, I knew this Christmas was about to become something none of us would ever forget. And when she opened that envelope in front of everyone, I realized it wasn't just about dinner anymore. Carol had something else planned, something that would change everything. Carol didn't just walk in, she arrived. Like a queen returning to her throne after a coup. Her heels clicked on the hardwood floor as every conversation in the room died down. The music still played faintly in the background. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. But the irony of the lyrics hung thick in the air. Jenna froze near the kitchen doorway, clutching a mug of hot cocoa like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. The kids peeked out from behind the couch, curious. Tasha's husband instinctively lowered the volume on the TV, and I swear even the dog went quiet. Carol looked around slowly, surveying the chaos she so clearly disapproved of. Wrapping paper on the floor, half-decorated gingerbread houses on the table, kids in reindeer pajamas chasing each other. Her lips pressed into that polite little smile she used when she was seething. "Well," she said finally, setting her purse down on the counter. "This is quite something." I kept my tone calm. "Merry Christmas, Carol." She turned to me, her eyes sharp but glimmering. "Oh, Eric, you really went all out. I must say, it's impressive how quickly you managed to organize all this." There was a pause before she added, "Especially considering I wasn't informed you'd be hosting Christmas this year." I met her stare. "You weren't informed because we weren't planning to compete with your dinner. We just wanted to celebrate with our kids." Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened. "Celebrate with your kids." "Yes, I've heard." Apparently, the entire family interpreted that as an invitation to abandon me. Lauren had followed her in, trailing behind like a shadow, her phone in hand as if she were documenting the moment. She gave Jenna a look that was equal parts pity and judgment. "Mom's really upset," she said softly, like she was breaking bad news. "You should have called her, Jen. She didn't deserve to be blindsided like this." Jenna's voice cracked. "Blindsided? She banned my kids from Christmas dinner, Lauren. What did you expect us to do? Drop them off at a kennel?" The room went tense. Even Carol blinked, just once, before regaining her composure. "Let's not be dramatic," she said smoothly. "I made a simple decision to have a quiet, elegant evening. I didn't ban anyone. I just wanted some peace." I stepped in. "You literally wrote that our kids were too loud and undisciplined for a proper celebration." Carol sighed like I was being unreasonable. "And look at them now," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the living room where the children were whispering and watching the adults. Running wild, interrupting conversations. "Eric, it's not about love, it's about respect. Something your side of the family never quite grasped." That hit like a punch. I saw Jenna flinch. Carol had a way of dressing up cruelty in soft words, like she was doing us a favor by being honest. But what happened next? That was when things turned from insult to betrayal. Carol reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the envelope she'd been holding earlier. She turned to Jenna with that same cool smile. "I came to bring you this," she said. "Since you've chosen to go your own way this Christmas, I thought it best to make things official." Jenna hesitated, then took the envelope. Inside was a cream-colored letter printed on fancy stationery, Carol's signature at the bottom. I could tell from Jenna's face that it wasn't good. Her eyes widened, then filled with tears. "What is this?" she whispered. Carol clasped her hands. "It's just some necessary adjustments. Since you and Eric have decided not to participate in the family Christmas, I've decided to redistribute the holiday fund." "The what?" I asked. She gave me a prim smile. "Every year, I set aside a sum of money for the grandkids, for their education, future gifts, that sort of thing. It's something I've done since Lauren's oldest was born. You know that." I didn't know that. Every year, Carol contributed a small savings bond to each grandchild's account. She loved reminding everyone of her generosity. It was one of the few things I respected about her until now. "Well," she continued, "given the circumstances, I've decided to reallocate Noah and Ella's shares." I just don't feel comfortable rewarding such disrespectful behavior. From their parents, of course. The room went dead silent. Jenna's voice trembled. You took away their college fund? Carol blinked innocently. Oh, don't be dramatic. It's not a college fund, it's a Christmas fund. They'll have plenty of opportunities in life, I'm sure. But it wouldn't be fair to the others, would it? Not when they're the only ones whose parents couldn't follow a simple rule. That was it. The line that snapped something inside me. I stepped forward. You're punishing kids because they didn't attend your dinner? I'm setting boundaries, she said calmly. Actions have consequences. Boundaries are one thing, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Emotional blackmail is another. You're hurting your grandkids because you can't stand not being in control. Carol's eyes narrowed just slightly. You always were ungrateful, Eric. From the very beginning, I warned Jenna that marrying you would bring drama into this family. And now look. She gestured around the room again, at the laughter, the mess, the happiness she couldn't understand. Chaos. Absolute chaos. Jenna's cousin Tasha finally spoke up. Carol, that's enough. You're the one who caused this. You told half the family their kids weren't welcome. You can't just. Carol cut her off sharply. Don't lecture me about family, Tasha. You weren't even invited to dinner this year for a reason. Tasha's jaw dropped, but before she could respond, Carol turned her attention back to Jenna, her tone suddenly soft, almost pitying. Sweetheart, she said, I'm doing this for you. One day, you'll understand. You'll thank me for teaching you that discipline and order matter more than chaos and noise. You'll see that family traditions mean nothing without standards. Jenna just stared at her. You call this love? She said quietly. Punishing your grandkids? Turning people against each other? I used to think you were strict, but I see it now. You're just cruel. Carol's face twitched, a tiny crack in her perfect composure. You'll regret saying that. Then she turned to leave, but before she did, she placed the wrapped box she'd been carrying onto our dining table. Those are the children's gifts, she said. I bought them before this nonsense began, and I'm too dignified to take them back. I'll leave them here. Merry Christmas. She started for the door, but Noah, sweet, innocent Noah, ran up before I could stop him. Grandma, wait, he said, holding out one of the ornaments he'd made. I made this for you. It says your name on it. He was holding the hand-painted ornament from before, the one that said, We love you, Grandma. His little hands were trembling. Carol looked down at him. For a moment, I thought I saw something human flicker across her face, but it vanished as quickly as it came. She smiled tightly. That's very nice, dear. You should give it to your mother instead. Then she turned and walked out. The door clicked shut, and the sound of it echoed like a gunshot. For a long moment, nobody said a word. The only sound was the faint jingle of Christmas music still playing in the background. Then Jenna crumpled the letter in her hand and started to cry. I felt something deep in my chest, a mix of rage and heartbreak. I wanted to chase after Carol, to tell her exactly what I thought of her. But instead, I walked over to Noah, who was standing there frozen, still holding the ornament. She didn't like it, he whispered. I knelt down beside him. No, buddy. She just forgot how to show it. He looked at me with those wide, sad eyes. Did we make Grandma mad? I pulled him into a hug. No, son. Grandma made herself mad. As the night went on, people tried to go back to enjoying the party, but the energy had shifted. The laughter was quieter, the music softer. Everyone felt the tension that Carol had left behind, the guilt, the confusion, the heartbreak. But then, something unexpected happened. Around 8 p.m., as we were getting ready to tuck the kids into bed, there was a knock on the door again. Jenna hesitated before opening it, but when she did, it wasn't Carol, it was Lauren. She stood there on the porch, wrapped in a shawl, snowflakes caught in her hair. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. Can I come in? She asked softly. Jenna nodded, surprised. Lauren stepped inside, looking around at the mess, the lights, the half-empty cups. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. Mom's furious. She said she's cutting ties with you for embarrassing her. But I can't keep pretending she's right. I saw what she did, Eric. That letter. She's gone too far. Jenna blinked, tears still glistening in her eyes. You stood up to her? Lauren nodded. I tried. She told me if I walked out, I shouldn't come back. So I left. And that was the first time I realized Carol's control was slipping. But she wasn't done yet. Because the next morning, when we thought the worst was behind us, something showed up in our mailbox that changed everything. Something far worse than a letter. Something that made it clear Carol wasn't going to lose quietly. The next morning was strangely quiet. Snow had settled thick on the front yard, muffling every sound. The house looked peaceful, like the storm from the night before had never happened. But when I opened the front door to get the newspaper, that illusion shattered. There it was, a crisp white envelope in the mailbox, sealed in Carol's perfect handwriting. My stomach sank before I even opened it. I stood there for a long moment, just staring at it, the cold air biting my hands. Jenna came up behind me, still in her robe. "Is it from her?" she asked softly. I nodded. "Yep. Just throw it away, Eric," she said. "I can't deal with her anymore." But I couldn't, because something told me this wasn't just another guilt trip. Carol was deliberate, every word, every gesture calculated. And if she'd sent another letter after last night's disaster, it meant she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. So I opened it. Inside was a single typed page on her usual heavy cream stationery. It read, "Eric and Jenna, after reflecting on the events of last night, I've come to realize that our family dynamic has become toxic, largely due to your constant undermining and disrespect. I no longer feel comfortable associating with people who mock my values or encourage others to turn against me. Effective immediately, I will be removing both of you and your children from all future family gatherings and trust arrangements. You are, of course, free to host your own celebrations as you see fit. I wish you the best of luck in your independent lives. Carol." I read it twice, then handed it to Jenna. Her eyes widened. Then she covered her mouth with her hand. "She's cutting us off," she whispered. "Completely." I nodded, feeling that dull, heavy ache of disbelief, the kind that sits in your chest and doesn't move. It wasn't about money or inheritance. It was about what it symbolized. Carol wasn't just punishing us anymore. She was erasing us, pretending we never existed in her carefully curated world. Jenna sat down at the kitchen table, staring at her mug. "I knew she was controlling," she said. "But this is cruelty." I sat across from her, feeling equal parts angry and numb. You know what the sad part is? She'll probably tell everyone she did this for our own good, that she's the victim. Jenna nodded, tears welling. She'll spin it into some story about how we were ungrateful and she had no choice. And she was right, because over the next few days, the phone call started. Her brother Mike called first. "Eric, I'm sorry, man, but Mom told everyone you cursed her out and ruined dinner. She said you're trying to turn people against the family." I could feel the heat rising in my chest. "What? That's ridiculous. She came to our house and—" I know," he said quickly, his voice uneasy. "But she's already told everyone her version. You know how it goes. She's convincing." One by one, the rest followed. Friends of the family, cousins, even an aunt I barely talked to. They all reached out with the same tone, polite concern mixed with quiet disbelief, as if they were trying to gauge whether Carol's story was true. By New Year's, the damage was done. Jenna's phone had gone silent. No calls, no invitations, no messages from her side of the family. Just a wall of quiet that grew thicker by the day. That month was the lowest point I can remember. Jenna stopped baking. The kids kept asking why Grandma didn't call. And I threw myself into work just to avoid the silence. I run a small contracting business, home renovations, repairs, that sort of thing. It's not glamorous, but I take pride in doing things right. Only that month, even work felt empty. My energy was gone. Every time I came home, the house felt dimmer. The laughter that had filled it just weeks before was replaced by this constant sense of loss. One night, Jenna came into my office, holding her phone. "She posted again," she said flatly. I looked up from my paperwork. "What now?" She turned the screen toward me. It was another Facebook post from Carol, a photo of her and Lauren at brunch, all smiles and champagne glasses. The caption read, "Sometimes peace comes from letting go of negativity, even when it's family. Surround yourself with those who share your values." There were dozens of likes, heart emojis, comments about strength and boundaries. It was like being publicly exiled. She'd rewritten the story again, and everyone believed it. That night, Jenna broke down. She sat on the couch, crying quietly while I tried to comfort her, but I didn't have the right words. Because I felt it too, that hollow pain of being misunderstood and powerless. For the first time in years, I felt small. But something inside me started shifting too. Not anger, not yet. Just resolve. Because while Carol was busy curating her perfect narrative, I realized I didn't need to play in her world anymore. I could build something better. It started small. A week later, I got a call from one of Jenna's cousins, Tasha again. "Hey," she said. "I heard what happened. For what it's worth, everyone at the party saw how she treated you. We believe you. And honestly, your Christmas was the best one we've had in years." That made me smile. A little spark of warmth after a month of cold. Then, one of my clients, a neighbor who'd come to the party, called to ask if I could remodel her kitchen. She told her friend, who told another friend, and suddenly, by late January, I had more work than I could handle. I started hiring again, expanded my crew. Before I knew it, I was booked for months. Meanwhile, Carol's version of peace started cracking. Word began to leak out, quietly, in whispers, that she'd gone too far. That her elegant Christmas ended awkwardly, with half the guests leaving early and the rest sitting in silence around an untouched roast. One of Jenna's aunts reached out privately. "Don't tell Carol I said this," she whispered over the phone. "But people are talking. They think she crossed a line." That was the moment something inside me changed. I stopped feeling like the victim. I started realizing that when someone builds their whole life on control, they crumble the second people stop obeying. And Carol's empire of politeness was starting to crack. By spring, our house had become the new family hub. Tasha and her kids came over for barbecues. Lauren started visiting too, cautiously at first, always checking her phone like she expected Carol to call. But slowly, she relaxed. She started laughing again. One night, after the kids were asleep, Lauren sat on our porch with Jenna and me. She looked exhausted but lighter somehow. "You know," she said quietly, "I spent my whole life trying to make Mom proud. Every Christmas, every birthday, I'd twist myself into who she wanted me to be. But watching her freeze out her grandkids, I can't do it anymore." Jenna reached for her hand. "You don't have to." Lauren smiled faintly. "I used to think you were the rebellious one, Jen. But now I see, you were the brave one." That meant more to Jenna than she could say. And me? I kept building. Work took off faster than I could have imagined. By summer, I'd landed a commercial renovation contract that doubled my yearly revenue. I hired more people, bought better equipment, and finally, for the first time in years, felt like we were thriving. Every once in a while, Carol would send something, a stiff, impersonal note through the mail, or a secondhand message through Lauren. Always cold, always distant. She never apologized, never admitted fault. But I could tell from the way people talked that her grip on the family was slipping. Then came the moment that changed everything again, the start of the rise. It was late July when Lauren called, her voice shaky. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Mom's planning something for the holidays. A big family reconciliation dinner. Except what?" I asked. "She's already told people that she's doing it to save the family name." I laughed bitterly. Classic Carol. But then Lauren said something that made me pause. "She wants to host it at the country club. Big event, fancy menu, photographers, the whole deal. She's even inviting local friends and colleagues. Says she wants to prove that the family's closer than ever. So what's the catch? She wants you and Jenna there." I froze. Lauren continued, "But she doesn't want your kids. She said, and I quote, 'Let's not repeat last year's chaos.'" That old anger started rising again, but this time it wasn't the helpless kind. It was controlled, focused, because now we weren't at her mercy anymore. We had our own circle, our own stability, and the power dynamic had shifted. Jenna looked at me after I hung up. "We're not going, are we?" I smiled slowly. "Oh, we're going. Just not the way she expects." That was the moment I started planning. Because if Carol wanted to play the perfect hostess again, to parade her reformed family in front of her rich friends, then fine. I'd give her a performance she'd never forget. But this time, the story wouldn't end with us humiliated. This time, the narrative would be ours. And Carol was about to learn what happens when the people you've spent your life controlling finally decide to take the stage on their own terms. When August rolled around, Carol's family reconciliation dinner started popping up everywhere. Her Facebook was plastered with posts about it. New beginnings, family unity, celebrating togetherness. The hypocrisy was almost impressive. Every caption had that glossy, detached sincerity she was known for. I could practically hear her saying it in her perfectly modulated voice. Lauren kept me updated. "She's gone all out," she said one night over the phone. "Private ballroom at the country club, gold name cards, a string quartet. She even hired a photographer. Of course she did, I said. She needs evidence that we've all forgiven her. Except, Lauren added, she still refuses to invite Noah and Ella. That didn't surprise me. Carol's biggest fear wasn't chaos. It was imperfection. Kids didn't fit into her curated world, especially not the ones she couldn't control. But here's where things got interesting. A few weeks later, my company was hired to handle a renovation project, a kitchen remodel at the same country club where Carol was hosting her dinner. I didn't notice the connection at first, until I went to meet the project manager and saw the event calendar on the wall. December 20th, private holiday dinner, Carol Winston, it read. I swear, fate has a sense of humor. As I stood there going over the blueprints, I realized something. Carol might have money, but I had access. My crew would be working in that building on and off until late November, plenty of time to learn the layout, talk to staff, and quietly gather information. I didn't want to humiliate her, not exactly. I just wanted her to see herself clearly for once, to feel what it was like to lose control. Over the next few months, I worked quietly. I got to know the event coordinator, a sharp woman named Maggie who didn't mince words. "Oh, Mrs. Winston," she said once when I mentioned her. "Yeah, we know her. She's been in here 3 times already to approve the lighting. Told me she wants the room to look angelic, not garish." I laughed. That sounds about right. Then, during one of our lunch breaks, Maggie let something slip. She's even bringing a local reporter to do a lifestyle piece. Said it's a charity dinner. I raised an eyebrow. Charity for what? She didn't say. Probably for her ego, Maggie said, smirking. That was when the plan started to take shape. If Carol wanted to turn this dinner into a spectacle, fine. I'd let her, and then I'd make sure the spectacle told a different story. First, I reached out to a few of the family members Carol had alienated, cousins, aunts, even one of her old friends who'd stopped speaking to her after the Christmas fallout. I told them about her reconciliation dinner. Most of them didn't even know they'd been uninvited. When I explained what I had in mind, they were all in. "I'm done tiptoeing around her," Tasha said. "If you're doing something, I want front row seats." By mid-October, the plan was solid. Subtle, but devastating. No shouting matches, no dramatic confrontations, just a quiet, public reminder that the people she'd spent her life controlling no longer revolved around her. The night of the dinner came faster than I expected. December 20th. The ballroom glittered with white lights, gold garlands, and the faint hum of a live cello. The whole place smelled like pine and wealth. Carol stood near the entrance, greeting guests in a red gown that probably cost more than my truck. "Eric," she said, forcing a smile when she saw me and Jenna walk in. "I'm so glad you could make it." Her eyes flicked toward the empty space beside us. "Where are the children?" "At home," I said casually. "You made that part pretty clear." She ignored the jab and looped her arm through mine, guiding us toward the main table like nothing had ever happened. The evening began exactly how I expected. Carol playing hostess, laughing too loudly, toasting to forgiveness and new beginnings. The reporter hovered nearby, snapping photos of her with Lauren and the other approved guests. But then, slowly, things started to change. At first, it was just one. Tasha walked in with her kids, uninvited but smiling. Carol's face froze for half a second, but she recovered quickly. "Oh, how lovely to see you," she said, her tone brittle. Then came more. Cousins, family friends, even Aunt Ruth, who Carol hadn't spoken to in 2 years after an argument over a vacation house. Within 30 minutes, half the room was filled with people Carol had deliberately excluded. And the best part? Every one of them was dressed beautifully, polite, cheerful, impossible for her to accuse of causing chaos. Carol's composure started to falter. Her eyes darted between the guests and the event staff, silently demanding an explanation. But I had anticipated that too, because earlier that week, I'd spoken to Maggie, the coordinator. I'd told her the truth, how Carol had fractured the family, how she was staging a fake reconciliation dinner. Maggie, to her credit, had rolled her eyes and said, "Well, that's not happening on my watch." So she had quietly added every uninvited family member's name to the guest list, with complimentary seating. Carol had no idea. As the evening went on, people started talking, laughing, reminiscing, catching up. But here's the thing, they weren't circling around her. For the first time in years, the family was just talking freely, without asking for her approval, Without worrying about appearances, I watched from my seat as Carol tried to steer the conversation, tried to make herself the center again. But every time she spoke, someone gently redirected the topic. Someone laughed a little too loudly over her. Someone turned their back. It was subtle, but it was death by 1,000 cuts. Then came the final touch. Halfway through dinner, the cellist began playing Silent Night. On cue, the ballroom doors opened, and in came Noah and Ella, holding small wrapped boxes. Carol's fork clattered against her plate. "What is this?" she hissed under her breath. I smiled. "Relax. They just wanted to bring gifts for their grandma." The room quieted as Noah and Ella walked up to her, their little faces glowing. "Hi, Grandma," Ella said shyly. "We made these for you." They handed her 2 boxes wrapped in silver paper. Carol opened them slowly. Inside were handmade ornaments, just like the ones from last year. But this time they said, "We love you even when you don't love us back." You could feel the air shift. Guests glanced at one another. Even the reporter paused. Carol's smile faltered completely. Her lips parted, but no words came out. For once, she didn't have a script. And that was the moment, the quiet, devastating moment, when her entire illusion cracked. I didn't need to humiliate her. I didn't need to yell. Watching her realize that every person in that room had stopped orbiting around her, that was the revenge. Because true power isn't control. It's letting go and watching the people who once feared you stand on their own. As the night went on, people began gravitating toward us instead, complimenting the kids, talking to Jenna, thanking us for bringing everyone together. Carol sat frozen at her table, smiling mechanically for the photographer who didn't know what else to do. By the end of the night, even Lauren walked over and hugged Jenna in front of everyone. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. That's when Carol finally stood up and left. No dramatic exit, no parting words. Just quiet, seething silence as she walked out of her own party. And when the doors closed behind her, the strangest thing happened. The music felt lighter. The laughter came easier. For the first time in years, it actually felt like Christmas again. But that wasn't the end. Because a few days later, after the photos from that night started circulating online, and the article titled, "Family Finds Real Unity After Holiday Rift," went viral, Carol called me. Her voice was trembling. "Eric," she said quietly, "we need to talk." When the phone rang, I almost didn't answer. After everything that had happened, the years of manipulation, the emotional landmines, hearing her name flash across my screen made my stomach tighten. But Jenna looked at me and said softly, "Pick up. Let's finish this." So I did. Carol's voice came through quiet, strained. It wasn't her usual polished tone. She sounded small. "Eric," she said, "I want to talk." I didn't say anything, just waited. After a long pause, she sighed. "I didn't deserve that. What you did at the dinner, bringing the children, inviting everyone behind my back, it was humiliating." I almost laughed. "You mean, it showed people who you really are?" "Don't mock me," she snapped, the old sharpness flickering for a moment before fading again. "You don't understand how hard it is to keep a family together. People need structure, discipline." "Carol," I interrupted, calm but firm. "You didn't keep the family together. You kept it afraid. There's a difference." Silence. Just the faint sound of her breathing through the receiver. Then she said, barely above a whisper, "They all turned on me. Even Lauren. I gave her everything, and she still walked out." "She didn't turn on you," I said quietly. "She just stopped letting you control her." I could tell she didn't know how to respond. For the first time, she wasn't holding the conversation hostage. Finally, she said, "You think you've won. But I built this family. You're nothing without me." I leaned back in my chair, looking around our living room. The Christmas lights still hanging by the window, the kids' laughter echoing from the other room. Jenna in the kitchen humming while she packed cookies into tins for the neighbors. "Maybe," I said. "But the difference is, our family actually wants to be together. You can't buy that with china and chandeliers." She didn't reply, just a shaky inhale, followed by the faintest tremor in her voice. "You embarrass me in front of everyone. Do you have any idea what people are saying?" I closed my eyes. "They're saying the truth, Carol. That you pushed too far, and everyone finally saw it." There was another long pause. Then, coldly, "You're no longer part of this family, Eric." I smiled to myself. "You said that a long time ago. I just finally believe it now." And then I hung up. She didn't call again. In the weeks that followed, the fallout spread quietly. The country club story, the one she'd tried to stage, had taken on a life of its own. The reporter she invited ended up publishing a sympathetic piece, but not the one she expected. It focused on forgiveness, growth, and learning to let go of toxic expectations. The photos told the real story: smiling kids, happy family, Carol in the background looking distant and alone. It went mildly viral, not huge, but enough that her social circle saw it. Enough that her friends started to whisper. Lauren told us later that Carol had stopped attending her bridge club. She says she needs a break from people, Lauren said. But honestly, I think she's just embarrassed. Over time, she faded from the center of things. The family still met up, birthdays, holidays, simple backyard dinners, but she never came. Sometimes she sent cards, short and cold, signed Best, Carol. Other times, nothing at all. The strange thing was, I thought I'd feel triumphant, vindicated. But I didn't. I just felt done. Like something that had been heavy for years had finally slid off my shoulders. Because revenge isn't about seeing someone destroyed. It's about freeing yourself from the need for their approval. That year, Christmas came around again, and we hosted it at our house, the same way we had before all of this started. The lights glowed warm, the kids laughed too loud, and the air smelled like cinnamon and pine. Lauren came early to help decorate, and as we were hanging ornaments, she found one in the box that made her stop. It was the hand-painted one Noah had made 2 years ago, the one that said, "We love you, Grandma." She held it up. "Do you want me to put this away?" I shook my head. "No, hang it on the front of the tree." She looked surprised. "You sure?" "Yeah," I said, smiling faintly. "It belongs there. It's part of the story." And that night, as the kids danced around the tree and the fire crackled in the background, I realized something. Carol might have built the walls around her version of family, but we built something real inside ours. A home that didn't need approval. A love that didn't need permission. And when I looked at my wife, my kids, and everyone who had chosen to be there, I felt the quiet satisfaction of knowing the truth, the kind that doesn't need to be shouted. Because in the end, Carol didn't lose because we beat her. She lost because we stopped playing her game. And that was the moment I knew we'd finally won. My name's Jordan, I'm 32, and I used to believe that family, no matter how flawed, would eventually come around, that deep down, they cared. Maybe they just didn't know how to show it. That belief used to be my anchor. But on my birthday this year, it finally sank for good. It started that morning. I wasn't expecting fireworks or a grand gesture, not even a gift. But a text, maybe a call, something to say, "Hey, we're thinking of you." Just something small to hold on to. Instead, I got a voicemail. My phone buzzed as I was making coffee, and I saw the little icon. I didn't recognize the number, but I hit play, wondering if maybe it was Mom calling from work or something. What I heard chilled me more than I care to admit. It was my mother's voice, unmistakably smug, casual, like she was talking about the weather. "Jordan, don't expect a call today. We're busy celebrating real family. You should understand that by now." That was it. No goodbye, no explanation, no hesitation. Just a flat dismissal wrapped in years of resentment and served cold on my birthday. I didn't move for a long time. Just stood there, coffee growing cold in my hand, replaying those words in my head. Real family. I wanted to believe it was a mistake. Maybe she was drunk or joking, but I knew better. I'd seen this coming in fragments for years, like a slow drip from a ceiling you pretend isn't leaking until the whole thing caves in. Let me rewind for a second. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. Not the favorite, not the golden child. That was my younger brother, Mason. I was the one who made sure the bills were paid when Mom lost her job, who skipped college parties to work extra shifts so we wouldn't lose the house after Dad left. While Mason dropped out of college to find himself, in Mexico, party with his girlfriend, I took over Dad's old delivery route to cover the mortgage Mom couldn't handle on her own. Eventually, I got a decent job in IT, moved into a small apartment downtown, and built a stable, quiet life. I stayed close by, too close, probably, and helped whenever she asked. Paid for her car to get fixed last winter. Co-signed a credit card. Even added her to a joint bank account when she said her Social Security payments were getting delayed. At the time, I didn't think twice about it. Family helps family, right? But in the last 2 years, something shifted. Calls got shorter. Texts unanswered. Invitations to family dinners stopped. At first, it was little things, being left off a group photo, finding out through Facebook that Mason had gotten engaged. Then last Thanksgiving, Mom forgot to tell me they'd changed the venue. When I called, she answered with, "Oh, I didn't think you'd want to come. You're always so busy." Busy? I'd spent 3 hours baking a stupid pecan pie. Still, I kept showing up, kept hoping, kept trying. So yeah, that voicemail hit different. Not because it was the first slap, but because it was the last one I was willing to take. I didn't cry. I didn't call back. I didn't even delete the message. I just sat on the couch, stared at the ceiling, and thought. Thought about all the money I'd lent. No, given, with no thanks. Thought about how Mason had once crashed my car during a test drive and laughed it off. Thought about how Mom had once told her friend, right in front of me, "Mason may not be successful, but at least he's fun." Thought about all the times I let them minimize me, shrink me, erase me. And then, I thought about the joint account. She'd asked me to add her a year ago when she said she couldn't open one alone due to bad credit. I'd meant to remove her, honestly. It was on my to-do list, right under get new tires and buy more paper towels. But I never did. And, apparently, she'd forgotten too. I logged in, and there it was. The account had nearly $14,000 in it, mostly from a tax return I'd deposited last month, planning to move it later, but never got around to. I checked the transactions. Mason had used the card at an electronics store 3 days ago. My mother had paid for brunch at a place downtown I'd never even been invited to. There was even a payment scheduled to go toward a vacation rental in Maui. In Mason's name. I stared at that screen for a long time. I wasn't angry. I was hollow. Like all the anger had already burned out, and now there was just ash. Quiet, weightless ash. I clicked transfer, emptied the entire account into my private one. Then I called the bank and had the joint account closed. Permanently. No hesitation. No warning. Then I remembered the car. A year ago, when her old Toyota broke down, I'd given her the spare car I'd inherited from my uncle, a dusty but solid Honda Accord, still in my name because I never got around to the DMV paperwork. She'd promised to transfer it eventually, said it was just paperwork. Classic Mom. I grabbed the title from my filing cabinet, called a buyer I knew from Craigslist. He picked it up that evening, cash in hand. Mom was out, apparently, because she didn't notice it was gone until the next morning. But I wasn't done. There was one more thing. The house. It wasn't hers. Not legally. It used to belong to my grandparents. But after Grandpa passed and Grandma moved to assisted living, it was left to me in the will. Mom got to stay, with my blessing, rent-free. The only condition? Pay the property taxes and keep it clean. Instead, she let Mason move in with his girlfriend, wreck the basement with his music studio, and treated it like her personal kingdom. She never even thanked me. Never even acknowledged it was mine. In fact, last month, Mason had the nerve to tell me, "We're thinking of redoing the kitchen. Don't worry, we'll let you know when it's done." Let me know. So I went into my files, pulled out the lease agreement I drafted but never sent, called my lawyer friend, spent an hour drafting a formal notice of eviction, printed it, signed it, slid it into an envelope with a little bow, and left it in their mailbox the next morning. I didn't text her, didn't warn her, didn't explain. I just gave her what she gave me, silence. And as I walked away from that house, watching the morning sun rise over the familiar cracked driveway I used to skateboard on as a kid, I felt something shift. Not satisfaction, not victory, freedom. But that was just the start. By the time the eviction notice landed in her mailbox, I'd already blocked her number. I wasn't trying to be theatrical about it. I just didn't want to hear the inevitable voicemail. I knew what it would be, the high-pitched panic, the sudden motherly concern, the gaslighting guilt trip wrapped in confusion. "Jordan, what is this? Why would you do this to us? After all we've been through." As if I was the one throwing the knife, not just removing it from my back. Instead, I kept my phone on silent, logged out of social media, and focused on packing for the weekend trip I'd booked for myself. Nothing fancy, just a quiet Airbnb upstate, surrounded by woods, where I could sit with my thoughts and maybe figure out who I was without the constant weight of being the reliable one. But they didn't wait long. By 10 a.m., I had 6 missed calls from Mason, 5 from Mom, on a different number, and 2 from no caller ID, which I was almost certain was her using a work phone. I didn't pick up any of them. I made coffee, checked my email, fed my cat, and read a book. I'd never felt more in control. Around noon, I got a knock on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I live in a quiet building with an even quieter hallway. When I opened the door, there stood Mason, shirt half wrinkled, jaw tight, pacing like a caged animal. "You emptied the account," he barked. No greeting. No "hey, happy birthday." Just pure entitled disbelief. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Yup. You sold the car?" "That's Mom's car." "Nope," I said calmly. "It was mine. In my name. Just like the house." His face turned crimson. "You're being a—" "Careful," I interrupted. "Finish that sentence, and I close this door." He took a breath, like he was trying to decide if I was bluffing. I wasn't. "You can't do this to us," he hissed. "You're just mad because Mom didn't call you." "No, Mason. I'm mad because you and Mom treat me like an ATM with a heartbeat." He blinked. I don't think he was used to me pushing back. For years, I played the quiet, dependable brother. The fixer. The cleaner-upper. He was seeing someone new now, someone who didn't ask for permission to draw the line. Then came the real kicker. He actually said, "She didn't mean that message. She was just venting." It was a joke. My laugh caught him off guard. "So was the eviction notice," I said. "Hope she finds it funny when the sheriff shows up in 30 days. Mason stepped forward, but I raised a hand. "Don't. Try. Me." And for once, he didn't. He turned around, muttering something about overreacting and "you'll regret this," and stormed back toward the elevator. I watched him go, heart racing, but steady. That afternoon, I got a string of texts. First from Mason. "You just destroyed this family. Don't think we'll forget this. Hope your precious cat keeps you warm when you're old and alone." Then came the ones from Mom. Each one a different flavor of manipulation. "You're tearing this family apart. I didn't raise you to be cruel. What happened to my sweet boy? I'll give you the money back. Just reverse the eviction. This isn't you." But it was. This was finally me. For the first time, I wasn't the doormat. I wasn't the less fun sibling. I wasn't the emergency contact, the silent donor, the background character in their chaos. I was the guy who stopped apologizing for existing. The next day, my lawyer friend called. "She left a voicemail," she said. "Sounds like she wants to contest the eviction." "Can she?" I asked. "No. She has no legal claim to the house. You've covered yourself. She's just flailing." I thanked her and hung up. Then I got a knock at my door. Again. This time, it wasn't Mason. It was my aunt. Aunt Deb has always been the Switzerland of the family. Neutral, smiling, slightly clueless, but never intentionally cruel. She came holding a Tupperware of lemon bars like she was making peace in a suburban war zone. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, but then I saw the worry in her eyes. Not performative, not judgmental, real concern. She sat on the couch like it was holy ground. "Jordan," she's spiraling. "She had years to treat me like a son, Deb." "I know," she said. And she was wrong. "You've always been there. Always. We all saw it." Then why didn't anyone say anything? Her silence was answer enough. "She's scared," she finally whispered. "She doesn't know how to be without you." I nodded. Neither did I. But now I do. Deb left shortly after. She didn't ask me to undo anything. She just gave me a hug and said, "I hope you sleep well tonight." I did. The days that followed were chaos for them. Mason tried to go online and blast me with a Facebook rant that started with "my brother just evicted our mother on his birthday." But he forgot that I had receipts, texts, photos, screenshots. I didn't even have to post them. My friends and coworkers backed me up before I even saw the post. One of my old college roommates commented, "Imagine being so ungrateful to the person keeping the lights on. Y'all deserve to be homeless." That comment got the most likes. Eventually, the post disappeared. 3 weeks later, I got a letter. A formal apology, typed, signed, from my mother. But I'm not going to spoil what it said yet. Because what happened on move-out day? That's when everything truly unraveled. Move-out day arrived on a cloudy Tuesday morning. I didn't go over there. I couldn't. My lawyer said I didn't need to, that the paperwork was airtight, the sheriff's office had scheduled the formal notice, and if my mother and Mason didn't comply, they'd be forcibly removed by the end of the week. Still, I tracked the time like a nervous clockmaker. 9 a.m., they were supposed to be out. By 9:17, my phone buzzed. A photo. It was from my neighbor across the street, Mr. Kindle, a retired postal worker who'd always nodded politely when I mowed the lawn during my visits. The photo showed my mother standing on the front porch in a robe, arms folded, glaring at two uniformed officers while Mason stood by a beat-up sedan, loading black trash bags into the trunk. The house looked tired. Overgrown hedges, peeling paint near the garage, the sagging rain gutter still unrepaired from last year's storm. I'd offered to fix it. She told me, "We're managing fine." Apparently, fine meant duct tape and denial. By noon, a second photo came in, the porch now empty, the for sale sign I'd authorized planted in the yard like a flag marking the start of something new. But the aftermath wasn't quiet. Later that evening, I got another knock on my door, and this time, I wasn't surprised. It was her. My mother stood in the hallway, wrapped in a thick gray coat, holding a manila envelope. She didn't look angry. She looked old, smaller, like she'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. She didn't ask to come in. She just handed me the envelope and said, I wrote everything down. I didn't say a word, just nodded. She lingered. Mason's living with friends. I'm figuring things out. More silence. I didn't mean to hurt you, she added, as if that could sweep away decades in a single breath. You did, I said. I know. Then she turned and walked away. I didn't open the envelope that night. I left it on the kitchen table while I made dinner, watched a show, brushed my cat. It wasn't until nearly midnight, when I was standing by the window with a mug of tea, that I finally picked it up. Inside was a letter, 8 pages, typed, double-spaced, full of memories, mostly hers. Childhood stories, things I'd forgotten, things I wish I had. She talked about Dad leaving, about how she'd buried her fear under pride, and how when I started helping financially, she let herself slip, convinced that if I could carry the weight, then I should. That being the reliable one meant being the responsible one, and being the responsible one meant being the invisible one. She didn't ask me to forgive her. She just explained. And then, at the very end, one sentence in bold. I spent so long asking what you could give me. I never asked what it cost you. I didn't cry. Not then. But something cracked. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. No calls. No knocks. Just the slow hum of moving on. Until Saturday morning. I was making pancakes when my phone rang. It was Aunt Deb. I smiled, expecting another peace offering. Maybe banana bread this time. But her voice was sharp. Jordan, she said quickly, you need to come to the church. Now. I froze. What? What? Mason. Your mom. They're here. And Mason just told the entire room you stole the house from them. My stomach sank. I grabbed my keys. By the time I pulled into the church parking lot, I could already hear the raised voices through the open double doors. A community fundraiser, something for the youth center, apparently, had drawn a decent crowd. And right in the middle of it, like a bad soap opera, stood Mason, gesturing wildly with a paper in hand. She forced our mom out, he said to no one and everyone. My brother thinks he's better than us just because he got lucky in a will. Lucky. That word hit me harder than expected. Because luck had nothing to do with it. I hadn't inherited fortune, I inherited obligation. I hadn't been given a mansion, I'd been handed a collapsing family and asked to hold it together. I stepped through the doorway, every eye turning toward me. Mason saw me and lit up like he'd been waiting. There he is, the golden boy, come to defend your kingdom. I stayed calm, walked slowly, looked around the room. Then I said, sure, let's talk about luck. And what I said next, well, that's when everything really came undone. I stood at the front of that little community room with everyone staring at me like I was the villain who just stepped onto the stage of a Sunday sermon. The folding chairs, the lemonade table, the sleepy piano music still echoing faintly from the corner. It all felt surreal. Like I'd been invited to my own trial and hadn't even known it. Mason was still holding that paper, a blurry printout of some bank statement I'd long since closed. He looked smug, like he'd just laid out undeniable proof that I was the world's worst human. You came to evict your own mother, he snapped. On your birthday, no less. Real classy, Jordan. I took a deep breath and turned to face the room. Some faces I recognized. A few old neighbors, some people from Mom's book club, even Mr. Kindle from across the street, frowning with his arms crossed. I didn't yell. I didn't defend myself in a tantrum. I just told the truth. Okay, I said quietly, letting the silence settle before continuing. Let's talk about what actually happened. And then I laid it out, piece by piece. No anger, no drama, just the truth, spoken plainly. I've paid the mortgage on that house for the last 5 years, I said. It was left to me in my grandfather's will. My mother was allowed to live there rent-free on the condition that she maintained it and paid property taxes. She didn't. I covered those too. When my brother moved in, I didn't charge rent. I didn't ask for anything. I just asked for respect. Someone in the back whispered something. I kept going. When her car broke down, I gave her mine. The spare, yes, but still mine. In my name. She never transferred the title. Never paid me back. I paid for the flowers at her birthday. Covered Mason's bail once when I stopped myself. Let's not go there. That got a few eyebrows to raise. Mason paled. I set up a joint account so my mom could pay her bills while she waited on delayed benefits. I forgot to remove her when she got back on her feet. That's on me. But I didn't expect her and Mason to use that money, my money, for a vacation to Maui they never even mentioned to me. I only found out when I saw the transaction. People were shifting in their seats now. Murmurs started. I glanced at my Aunt Deb, who stood near the corner, eyes wide, one hand over her chest. I knew she'd already known some of this, but not all. Mason tried to interrupt. You're twisting it. But I held up a hand and continued. On my birthday, I said slowly, I got a voicemail from my mother. She said, and I quote, "Don't expect a call. We're busy celebrating real family." You could have heard a pin drop. She didn't forget to call. She chose not to. So yeah, I closed the account. I sold the car. I issued a formal eviction notice for a house that legally belongs to me. Because I finally understood something. I turned toward Mason. Love doesn't mean letting people drain you dry. It doesn't mean being the quiet one who pays for everyone else's mistakes, just so they'll tolerate your presence. Love means boundaries. And if being the bad guy is the only way to make those boundaries stick, then fine. I'll be the villain. For a long time, no one said anything. Then, a voice, Mr. Kendall, low and tired. Good for you, son. Another voice followed. Should have cut them off years ago. Even a few claps. Nothing loud. Nothing dramatic. Just small affirmations from people who'd apparently been watching from the sidelines longer than I realized. Mason stormed out a moment later, muttering curses under his breath. A few people followed. Most stayed. My mom didn't come to the fundraiser at all. I found out later she'd been waiting outside in the car. I think, deep down, she knew exactly what was coming. And she didn't have the energy to face it. Aunt Deb met me outside afterward and pulled me into a hug that lasted longer than it probably should have. You okay? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. But I think I will be. In the weeks that followed, things got quieter. Mason stopped trying to contact me after his smear campaign fizzled out. Turns out when your reputation is built entirely on charm and manipulation, it doesn't hold up too well under facts. His friends, the ones he bragged about living with, kicked him out after a week. I heard through the grapevine he was couch hopping and trying to start a podcast. Classic Mason. As for Mom, she tried reaching out again. This time, without the usual guilt. Just quiet, hesitant texts like, "Thinking of you. Hope you're doing okay. I'm sorry." I didn't block her. But I didn't respond either. Not at first. I needed space. And in that space, something unexpected happened. I got better. The knot in my chest that had been there since I was 17 started to loosen. I stopped waking up dreading my notifications. I redecorated my apartment. Got rid of the beige furniture I'd always chosen to blend in. Bought a bright yellow couch. Hung up art I actually liked. Started cooking again. Joined a local hiking group. Met people who didn't expect anything from me except presents. Eventually, I did write her back. Just one message. I forgive you, but I'm not ready to be close. Maybe someday. Her reply? That's fair. I'll wait. And that was that. The house was cleaned out, repainted, and listed. It sold to a young couple with a toddler and a rescue dog. I met them once during the walkthrough and gave them my number in case they had questions about the neighborhood. They invited me to the housewarming party. I politely declined. I didn't need to go back. I'd spent so long trying to be part of a family that only valued what I gave them. I forgot that I didn't have to earn love to deserve it. Now, I have my peace. I have my boundaries. And for the first time in my life, I have a future that's mine. So no, I didn't burn the bridge. I just lit a path away from it. And honestly, it's warm over here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. My name's Josh, I'm 27, and up until last year, I thought my relationship with my family was complicated but salvageable. You know how some families are lots of unspoken tension swept under the rug, everyone smiling at gatherings while nursing 1,000 tiny cuts no one talks about. I figured that's just how it was. We were messy, but we were still family. I kept telling myself that. I kept believing it right up until the moment my mom hissed across the phone, "Don't even think about coming to the wedding. We don't need you ruining Emma's big day." Emma, my younger sister, golden child, perpetual center of attention. If she so much as sneezed in public, my parents acted like she'd cured the common cold. Meanwhile, I could work 2 jobs through college, send home money to help with bills, and still get a text from my mom about how Josh could try being a little more like Emma. I had gotten used to it, shrugged it off, smiled through it. But something about her voice that day, sharp, dismissive, final, cracked something inside me that I didn't even realize was holding me together. The wedding had been looming over everything for months. It was supposed to be this huge event, a big country club affair with string lights and manicured gardens, the kind of thing my family would be bragging about to distant relatives for years. They had all but assigned me the role of financial backer without even asking. "It's just a little help," my mom would say, handing me vendor quotes that made my stomach churn. At first, I agreed. Quietly. I'd always been the fixer. The one who made things work when money was tight. When I landed a stable job in IT last year, they saw it as their golden opportunity to cash in. I paid the deposit for the venue. I paid for the caterer. I paid the deposit for Emma's dream photographer, a guy who charged more for a day's work than some people make in a month. I didn't complain. Not once. But as the months crept closer to the wedding date, I started noticing things. Little omissions. Invitations going out that didn't include a +1 for me. Group chats where I was left out. My mom and sister discussing seating charts at dinner, laughing about putting problem people in the back, then glancing at me with barely hidden amusement. I tried not to let it get to me. Honestly, I told myself I was being paranoid. Until one afternoon, when I swung by my parents' house to drop off a check for the florist. Emma was there, sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, my mom leaning over her shoulder. They were working on the seating chart again. When I walked in, the screen flicked off, just a little too fast. I wasn't supposed to see it, but I caught a glimpse, a tiny table tucked way at the edge of the reception map, by the bathrooms. A single-place card with my name on it. No +1. No centerpiece. I would have been seated closer to the janitor's closet than the dance floor. That night, I went home and sat on my couch, staring at nothing. I thought about all the times I'd been over backward for them. The money I sent home when Dad's hours got cut. The loans I co-signed. The weekends I drove 2 hours to fix their Wi-Fi, babysit Emma's cat, help Dad move furniture, whatever they needed. And still, they looked at me like a footnote. An afterthought. The next morning, my phone rang. It was my mom. "Don't even think about coming to the wedding," she snapped. "We don't need you ruining Emma's big day." No hesitation. No sadness. Just a cold, efficient order like she was swatting away a fly. I don't know what she expected me to say. Maybe she thought I'd beg. Apologize for existing. I didn't. I just smiled, pulled out my laptop, logged into the payment portal for their dream photographer, and canceled the deposit. Then I took a screenshot of the cancellation confirmation and sent it to her. No words. Just the picture. She didn't call back. Didn't text. The silence was deafening, but it didn't hurt like I thought it would. It felt clean. Like setting down a weight you didn't realize was crushing you. That was just the beginning. You see, what my mom didn't know, what none of them knew, was that a week earlier, before everything blew up, I had taken a long, hard look at my bank account, at all the payments that had gone out, at the contracts I'd signed on their behalf. And something in me had snapped. Quietly, calmly, I started making calls. I knew the owner of the venue. Not personally, but through a friend. It didn't take much. A few polite emails. A bank transfer. And suddenly, I wasn't just someone who had put down a deposit. I was the actual owner of the full reservation for their wedding date. They didn't know. I never told them. At first, I hadn't planned to do anything with that information. I thought maybe I'd let it ride out, cancel my contributions, wish them luck, and walk away. But after that phone call, after being told so flatly, so casually, that my presence was an inconvenience, my plans shifted. I didn't just want to back out. I wanted them to feel it. I spent the next few days carefully, meticulously unraveling the financial scaffolding holding their dream day together. Canceling the flower orders. Retracting the catering deposits where I could. Even the DJ, a guy I went to high school with, got a call. "Change of plans," I said simply. "They won't be needing you." Each time I clicked cancel or withdraw, a little more bitterness leaked out of me, replaced by something steadier, colder. Not revenge, exactly, at least not in the shouting, angry, soap opera way. Just balance. Correction. Of course, none of it made a ripple at first. The family group chat buzzed on without me, full of updates about centerpieces and dress fittings and bridal showers. My name didn't come up once. If I hadn't known better, I would have thought they had already scrubbed me from their lives. But there was one final piece I couldn't touch yet, the venue itself. The way the contract was structured, technically, everything was still booked. Paid for. Ready to go. It wasn't until a week before the wedding that final confirmations were required. If those weren't made, the venue could and would be closed to the event. No access. No refunds. No ceremony. No reception. I scheduled a reminder for the final day I could pull the plug. I marked it on my calendar. Circled it in bright red. In the meantime, I waited. I worked. I kept my head down. And slowly, the pressure inside me began to coil tighter and tighter, because I knew, with absolute certainty, that when the truth finally hit them, it wasn't going to be gentle. It was going to be a landslide. And they had no idea. The week of the wedding arrived like a slow-moving storm cloud. I stayed silent, ghosting the few family members who tried to reach out with vague, "Hope you're doing okay" texts. I knew what they really meant. Hope you're not planning to make a scene. I wasn't. Not the way they feared, anyway. The night before the venue deadline, I sat on my couch again, the same place I had sat weeks earlier, and opened my laptop. My finger hovered over the confirmation button. One click, and it would all collapse. I leaned back and closed my eyes for a moment, thinking about everything. About Emma's smug little smile. About my mom's voice, dripping with disdain. About the years of being the backup plan, the wallet, the invisible sun. Then I opened my eyes, smiled faintly, and clicked. The confirmation popped up on the screen. Venue reservation canceled. No access granted. No refund issued. And just like that, the clock started ticking. I went to bed that night with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. The real fun hadn't even started yet, but it was about to. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and painfully bright, one of those days where the sun seems almost too cheerful, oblivious to the disaster brewing beneath it. I woke up early, not because I had anywhere to be, but because, for once, I wanted to be awake for everything. I made myself a slow breakfast, flipped through channels aimlessly, and waited. Meanwhile, over at the country club, chaos was quietly detonating. I imagined it easily. The florist pulling up with van loads of flowers, only to find the gates locked. The photographer standing around, camera bag slung over one shoulder, texting Emma frantically. Guests beginning to arrive in polished cars, trickling into an empty parking lot, dressed to the nines with nowhere to go. Confused murmurs turning into frustration, into outrage. Around 10 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from my aunt. "Josh, are you on your way? There's a problem." I didn't reply. Just put my phone face down on the coffee table. 5 minutes later, another text. This time from Emma herself. "Where are you? The venue is locked. Mom says you might know something? Call me now." I sipped my coffee. Another buzz. My dad. My cousin. 2 more aunts. The group chat. One after the other, lighting up my screen like a Christmas tree, each message increasingly panicked. Apparently, it hadn't taken long for the country club staff to inform them that the booking was canceled. No reservation. No event scheduled. And definitely no backup plan. At 11 a.m. sharp, my mom called. Not texted, called. That was how I knew they were really desperate. I let it ring out the first time. Then again. Then a third time. It wasn't until the 4th call that I finally answered, putting her on speaker as I leaned back in my chair, stretching out like I had all the time in the world. "Josh," she barked the second the line connected. "Where are you? You need to get down here right now. They're saying we don't have a venue. This has to be a mistake. You handled the deposits, didn't you?" Her voice wasn't the scolding tone I was used to. It was cracking around the edges, frantic, desperate. It almost made me laugh. Almost. I cleared my throat. "No mistake, Mom." There was a beat of stunned silence. Then she snapped. "What do you mean? No mistake? Are you seriously telling me you sabotaged your own sister's wedding?" I tilted my head, smiling even though she couldn't see it. "Funny," I said casually. "You're the one who told me not to ruin her big day. I'm just doing exactly what you asked." Her shriek of frustration was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "You selfish little, after everything we've done for you. After all the money we spent raising you. You would do this to your own family." I let her rant, tuning her out, hearing only the hypocrisy dripping from every word. "After everything we've done for you." as if decades of emotional neglect and financial exploitation counted as charity. When she finally ran out of steam, panting into the phone, I said calmly, "The venue is under my name." "You never thought to double-check, did you?" "Fix this, Josh," she shrieked. "Call them. Pay whatever it takes. Get it back." I laughed softly. "Not my problem anymore. Have a great day, Mom." And I hung up. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at my phone, feeling nothing. No guilt, no regret, just a quiet, almost sacred kind of peace. The messages kept pouring in. My sister's furious, barely coherent texts. My dad's blunt threats, "Fix this or we're done with you." Even my grandmother, who had always been the only halfway decent adult in my life, texted simply, "Please come. Please make this right." But there was nothing to make right. Not anymore. I heard later from a distant cousin who thought the whole thing was hilarious, that they tried to scramble a backup venue, but everything was booked solid. It was prime wedding season. No one had availability at the last minute, not even for a family willing to pay through the nose. Guests milled around the country club's parking lot for hours before slowly, awkwardly trickling away. The dream wedding Emma had plastered all over Instagram and Pinterest for a year collapsed into nothing more than a sad, soggy lunch at a nearby chain restaurant. No flowers, no string quartet, no golden hour photos under fairy lights. Just cold ham sandwiches and a growing pile of resentment. Emma, of course, had a complete meltdown. Screaming, sobbing, throwing her bouquet across the parking lot, accusing everyone around her, especially me, even though I wasn't there to hear it, of ruining her life. I wish I could say I felt triumphant, like some victorious movie hero walking away from an explosion in slow motion. But honestly, I just felt free. The weight was gone. The constant, gnawing anxiety about whether I was good enough, supportive enough, useful enough, erased in an instant. They had made it perfectly clear what they thought of me. And for the first time, I believed them. I let myself believe it. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and my phone finally fell silent, I sat out on my tiny apartment balcony with a cold drink and watched the sky turn pink. Somewhere, my family was probably still trying to stitch together the ruins of their perfect day. Blaming me, hating me. It didn't matter. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing their approval. I wasn't chasing anything. I was done. Or at least, I thought I was done, until a knock at my door made me freeze, bottle halfway to my lips. I set the bottle down slowly, my pulse thudding in my ears. For a second, I stayed frozen, staring at the door like it might disappear if I just wished hard enough. Another knock came, louder this time, followed by a muffled voice I hadn't heard in years. "Josh, it's Grandma. Please, honey, open the door." I blinked, momentarily stunned. Of all the people I thought might show up after the wedding fiasco, Grandma was last on the list. She was the only one who had ever treated me like I mattered, like I wasn't some disappointing afterthought trailing behind Emma's bright, shiny footsteps. Still, old habits die hard. My fingers hovered over the deadbolt, hesitating. Was this a trap? Some kind of guilt mission? The third knock was softer, almost tired. "Please," she said again. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. Grandma stood there, her small frame wrapped in a light sweater, clutching a sad little plastic container of what looked like homemade cookies. Her hair was a little messier than usual, her lipstick a little smudged. And her eyes, they looked hollow, like she hadn't slept at all. "Hi, sweetheart," she said quietly, trying for a smile and failing miserably. I stepped aside wordlessly, letting her in. She shuffled into my living room, looking around like she barely recognized the place, even though she'd visited once or twice over the years. She set the cookies down on the coffee table like it was a peace offering, then clasped her hands together and wrung them nervously. For a moment, we just stood there in awkward silence, the ticking of the cheap wall clock filling the room. Finally, she said, "I'm sorry." I blinked again, almost laughing. Out of everyone involved in today's disaster, she was probably the only one who didn't owe me an apology, and yet, here she was, the only one with enough backbone to say it. "You didn't do anything," I said stiffly, shoving my hands into my pockets. "I didn't stop it either," she said, her voice breaking a little. "I should have a long time ago, when they started treating you like a wallet instead of a son, when they made you feel like you had to earn a place at the table." She sank down onto the couch with a soft groan, like the weight of it all was finally too much to bear. I saw it happening. I told myself it wasn't my place, that it wasn't my business. But it was. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to brush it off, make it easier for her. Another part, the raw, angry part one hadn't even realized was still simmering, wanted to scream, "Where were you all those years?" In the end, I just sat down across from her and stayed quiet. She fiddled with the hem of her sweater for a while, then looked up at me with watery eyes. "They're blaming you, you know," she said softly, "saying you were petty, immature, that you ruined Emma's wedding out of spite." I snorted under my breath. Of course they were. Why take responsibility when you could just scapegoat the one person you've been scapegoating for decades? But, she continued, her voice firming slightly, I told them the truth. I told them if they wanted to know who ruined Emma's wedding, they should look in a mirror. I stared at her, stunned. She smiled sadly. They didn't take it well. I couldn't help it. A short, sharp laugh escaped me. No, I bet they didn't. For the first time since the whole thing started, some of the tightness in my chest eased. Just a little. Just enough. "I'm not here to make you go back," she said quietly. "I'm not here to guilt you or beg you to fix things. I needed you to know you're not crazy. And you're not alone." The sincerity in her voice cracked something inside me. I looked away quickly, blinking hard. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that until the words hit me like a sucker punch. Grandma stood up, smoothing her sweater down. "I'll leave you be," she said, nodding toward the cookies. "Figured you could use something sweet today, even if the rest of it's gone sour." She shuffled toward the door, and for a heartbeat, I almost let her go without saying anything. Almost. "Grandma," I said, my voice rougher than I liked. She turned back, her hand on the knob. "Thank you," I said simply. Her eyes softened. "Always, sweetheart." And then she was gone. I sat there for a long time after that, staring at the closed door, the untouched cookies, the evening sun bleeding orange across the walls. I should have felt lighter, freer. And I did. But underneath it, there was something else brewing. A slow, simmering realization. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because the texts hadn't stopped coming. And neither had the voicemails. My phone buzzed again where it lay on the table, rattling slightly against the wood. I glanced at the screen. It was Emma this time. And the message she sent made my blood run cold. "You think you've won? Just wait. You have no idea what you've started." For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the glowing message from Emma. "You think you've won? Just wait. You have no idea what you've started." It was a threat, pure and simple. A childish one, sure, the kind of thing you'd expect from a spoiled brat who had never heard the word no before, but there was something about it that stuck with me. A part of me, the part that had spent years getting used to being blindsided by my family, knew better than to brush it off. Still, I didn't respond. I just locked my phone and set it down face first. I wasn't about to play their game. For a few blissful days, it was almost peaceful. I didn't hear anything, not from my mom, not from Emma, not even from my dad, who was usually the first to come swinging when things didn't go his way. I went to work, went to the gym, cooked dinner in my little kitchen with the crooked cabinet door. It was nice, quiet, almost normal. But normal never lasts long with my family. It started with the social media posts. At first, they were subtle. Emma posting cryptic Instagram stories about betrayal and fake family with moody black and white selfies. My mom sharing long Facebook rants about entitled children who destroy everything good out of jealousy, tagging nobody but making sure half the family would see it. Little potshots fired into the void, hoping to draw blood. I ignored it. Then the phone calls started. Not to me, they'd finally figured out I wasn't picking up, but to my job. An anonymous tipster called HR to report me for unethical behavior. They claimed I'd embezzled funds, that I was unreliable, mentally unstable. Wild accusations that didn't hold water, but forced my manager to pull me into a humiliating routine check-in, just to be safe. Luckily, my boss, a no-nonsense woman named Carla, saw right through it. "Family drama?" she asked dryly after we went through the checklist. I nodded, feeling a surge of shame I hadn't expected. Carla just shrugged. "Happens to the best of us. As long as the servers stay up and you don't throw a chair through a window, we're good." I could have hugged her. Instead, I just muttered a thank you and got back to work. But it wasn't just my job. They went after everything they could think of. My landlord got a letter accusing me of running an illegal business out of my apartment. The gym I frequented started getting prank calls, demanding my membership be revoked. My Amazon account was hacked, minor stuff, Someone trying to rack up charges under my name, but enough to be a giant headache. They were trying to smoke me out, punish me, scare me into crawling back and apologizing. I didn't. If anything, it steeled my resolve. One evening, about 2 weeks after the wedding that never was, I got another knock at the door. This time, I looked through the peephole first. It was my dad. I hesitated. Not because I was scared, not exactly, but because seeing him standing there, arms crossed, jaw clenched, instantly transported me back to 1,000 memories of slammed doors and muttered disappointments. Of never being enough. I opened the door halfway, keeping my foot braced against it. "What do you want?" I asked flatly. He didn't waste time. "You're going to fix this," he said. I laughed, sharp and humorless. "Fix what?" "Your failure to raise decent human beings." His face twisted, and for a second, I thought he might actually hit me. But he just shook his head, a sneer curling his lips. "You think you're better than us now? You're nothing, Josh. You're just a bitter little boy who couldn't stand to see his sister happy." I leaned casually against the doorframe. "Funny. From where I'm standing, it looks like Emma's the bitter one. And you're just sad." His hands curled into fists at his sides, but again, he held himself back. "Barely. You owe this family," he growled. "I owe you nothing," I said quietly. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the tension so thick I could feel it pressing against my skin. Then he did something I didn't expect. He laughed. Low, ugly, mean. "You think this is over?" he said. "You think you can just walk away and pretend we don't exist? You'll come crawling back one day. People like you always do. When you're alone, when you're broke, when no one else wants you. You'll realize you had a family once, and you threw it away." I smiled. A small, real smile. "No," I said. "I had a burden, and I set it down." I shut the door in his face. He pounded on it once, twice, shouted something muffled and furious, but I didn't open it again. I just turned away and let him shout himself hoarse. Eventually, he left. And with him, something else left too, the last thread tying me to them. The last whisper of guilt. The last lie that I owed them anything. The fallout, of course, was spectacular. Without me footing the bill, the country club sued my parents for breach of contract. Turns out, they had signed a few things without reading the fine print. They were on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars they didn't have. Emma tried to sue me personally for emotional distress, but every lawyer she talked to laughed her out of the office. Turns out, being petty isn't a crime. Word got around the extended family too. Cousins and second cousins who had always harbored quiet resentments against the perfect branch of the family tree started pulling away. Holidays got awkward. Invitations dried up. My parents' little kingdom of appearances crumbled like a sandcastle against a rising tide. They tried to rebuild, of course. New lies. New narratives. But it was too late. Too many people had seen the cracks. As for me, I moved. Not far, just a different part of town, but far enough that they couldn't find me easily. I changed my number. Blocked them on everything. Started fresh. I kept my job. Got a promotion, actually. Carla called it a reward for surviving a hostile family takeover. I made new friends. Real ones who liked me for me, not for what I could give them. Grandma and I stayed in touch. She came over for coffee once a week, and sometimes we sat in companionable silence. Sometimes we talked about everything and nothing. She apologized a lot at first, but eventually I made her stop. It wasn't about blame anymore. It was about choosing who you kept in your life and who you let go. One afternoon, a few months after it all blew up, she brought over a small, battered photo album. Inside were pictures I barely remembered, birthdays, school plays, vacations, and in every single one, I saw the same thing. A boy trying so hard to be loved by people who never really saw him. I closed the album and set it aside. "I see you now," Grandma said softly. And for the first time, I believed her. I won't lie and say it didn't hurt sometimes. That some nights, when the city lights flickered through my window and everything was too quiet, I didn't think about what I'd lost. But I also thought about what I'd gained. Freedom, self-respect, peace, and the unshakable knowledge that no matter what came next, I'd never, ever settle for being treated like an afterthought again. Some losses are really just disguised victories. And walking away from them was the best thing I ever did. My name is Daniel, and I turned 26 a few weeks ago. I'd love to tell you that it was a day filled with laughter, hugs, and a table stacked with food and gifts. But the truth is, it was the loneliest night of my life. My parents told me they were too tired to celebrate, and instead of a dinner, a cake, or even a card. They ordered takeout for themselves and went to bed before the clock even hit 9. I sat in the living room with the glow of the TV flickering against the walls, a container of cold rice in my hands, and the sound of their bedroom door shutting like the final note in a song I never wanted to hear. At first, I told myself it was fine, that maybe they'd make it up to me tomorrow, or that they just needed rest. But then, hours later, my phone buzzed. My cousin had posted stories on social media, videos of a huge dinner out, balloons tied to chairs, even a birthday cake with sparkling candles. And there they all were. My parents, my brother, my cousins, everyone I grew up with, smiling like it was the happiest night of their lives. Everyone was there, except me. I stared at the screen, my thumb frozen above the replay button, until the phone slipped out of my hand and hit the couch. It wasn't the first time they had made me feel like an afterthought. Growing up, my brother was always the one who deserved the spotlight. He got the newest clothes, the extra tutoring, the car when he turned 18. When I graduated, they congratulated him for being such a supportive brother. When I landed my first job, they joked about how he had been the real motivator. It was subtle at times, but cutting all the same. I had learned to live with the small jabs, the quiet exclusions, the way my accomplishments were twisted until they seemed like his. But this night, seeing them clapping, cheering, and raising glasses while I sat alone at home, it broke something in me. I didn't say a word. I didn't comment, didn't call, didn't text. I just let the silence sit heavy in the room. The next morning, the silence shattered with a message from my mom. "We need $2,850 for the mortgage." Just like that. No mention of my birthday, no apology, no acknowledgement that they had left me out. Just a demand, like I was their safety net, like my existence was only useful when it came to solving their financial problems. I stared at that message for a long time. My chest tightened, and I thought about every time I had stepped in to help. The time I covered the electric bill when Dad forgot to pay. The time I lent them money for car repairs, never seeing a cent back. The time I worked double shifts just so they wouldn't lose the house, while my brother blew cash on vacations and new gadgets. Every time, I told myself I was doing it because I cared about my family. But in that moment, with their laughter from last night still echoing in my head, it hit me. I was just their backup plan. I typed out a reply slowly, my fingers trembling, and read it over 3 times before hitting send. "Ask the ones you celebrate." Then I turned off my phone and placed it face down on the table. By the time I woke up the next morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop. 61 missed calls. Messages flooding in. A single text from Dad that stopped me cold. "Don't do this." For the first time in my life, I felt the shift of power, like the ground beneath me had changed. All my life, I'd been the one chasing their approval, bending over backward to be included, desperate for scraps of affection. Now, it was them scrambling, calling, begging for a response. And me? For once, I wasn't picking up. That was just the beginning. The cracks in the facade of family were only starting to show, and I could already sense the storm that was about to break. The calls didn't stop. By mid-morning, my phone looked like it was under siege, voicemails stacking up, notifications flashing, each one a reminder of how desperate they suddenly were now that I wasn't available to fix things. Out of morbid curiosity, I finally listened to one of the voicemails. It was my mom's voice, shaky and defensive. "Daniel, honey, I don't know why you're acting this way. Last night wasn't a big deal, you know we love you. But we really need you to send the money right away. The bank is going to start calling if you don't." Her words were careful, almost rehearsed, like she was trying to minimize what had happened. Last night wasn't a big deal. That was her summary of being excluded from my own birthday while they paraded around town celebrating someone else. I felt my jaw tighten, a coldness seeping into my chest. For once, I didn't let guilt twist her words into excuses. Later that day, I got another notification, this time from my cousin's group chat. They had posted more pictures from the night before. My brother holding the cake, everyone singing around him, balloons spelling out congrats. My stomach sank as I read the captions. It wasn't even my cousin's birthday they were celebrating. It was my brother's promotion at work, a job he'd only landed because Dad had pulled strings with one of his old friends. They'd chosen that night, my night, to throw him a surprise party, and they hadn't even had the decency to be honest about it. When I didn't respond, my dad tried his turn at guilt. He sent a long text about how family is about sacrifice and how I was being immature for holding grudges over a dinner. I read every word, my chest burning. It wasn't about a dinner. It was about years of being invisible unless they needed me. But the way he framed it, it was as if I was the selfish one for not caving on command. I stayed silent, and that silence drove them wild. By day 3, my brother finally called. I shouldn't have answered, but something in me wanted to hear his voice, to confirm what I already suspected. The moment I picked up, he didn't even say hello. "You're seriously overreacting," he scoffed. "They didn't mean anything by it. Besides, my promotion is huge for this family. Don't make everything about you." I almost laughed at the irony. Not making everything about me. My whole life had been about him. His sports tournaments, his grades, his milestones, his celebrations. And now, when I finally had a day that should have been mine, they had twisted it into his spotlight too. "I'm not sending the money," I told him flatly. There was a pause, then a sharp laugh. "You're kidding, right? You know they can't cover it without you. Don't be stupid, Daniel. Just do it. That's what you're there for. That's what you're there for." The words cut deeper than I expected. In his voice, there wasn't even a shred of doubt. He genuinely believed my role in the family was to sacrifice quietly so he could shine. I hung up without another word. That evening, another message popped up, this time from my aunt. She'd never reached out to me unless it was for family events, but now she wrote, "Daniel, your parents are older. You need to step up. Stop being difficult. Think of your brother. He has a future to protect, and you can't let money problems drag him down." The manipulation was so blatant, it almost felt like satire. Protect his future? What about mine? What about the nights I worked 2 jobs, the mornings I dragged myself to class with bloodshot eyes, the years I kept the lights on in their house without so much as a thank you? I sat in silence, scrolling through the thread of messages, and it dawned on me. They weren't apologizing because they didn't see anything wrong. They didn't see me as a person to celebrate, just a resource to exploit. My value wasn't in who I was. It was in what I could provide. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, hearing their voices in my head. "You're overreacting. Stop being difficult. That's what you're there for." Over and over, until the words lost meaning and became noise. For the first time, I wondered what life might look like if I stopped answering, stopped paying, stopped being their safety net altogether. The tension was rising, and I could feel something breaking loose inside me, like a rope snapping after being pulled too tight for too long. They didn't know it yet, but my silence wasn't weakness. It was the beginning of something they'd never seen from me before. The breaking point came faster than I expected. About a week after my birthday, when the flood of calls had started to thin out, I got home from work and found my mailbox stuffed with an envelope. No return address, just my name scrawled across the front in my mom's handwriting. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, it was a letter, an apology, something real. But when I opened it, my hands went cold. Inside wasn't a letter. It was a copy of a withdrawal slip. $2,850. The exact amount they had begged me for. And the account number wasn't theirs, it was mine. I dropped into a chair, staring at the slip until the numbers blurred. I hadn't authorized anything. I pulled up my banking app, my pulse hammering, and there it was, the money was gone. My account had been drained overnight. I scrolled through the transaction details, my chest tightening. The withdrawal hadn't been online. It had been made in person, at the branch near their house. The betrayal hit me in waves. Not just that they had taken the money, but that they had planned it. Someone had gotten hold of my account information. And considering I was the only one in the family who kept every detail guarded, the only explanation was that they had gone through my things. My parents had keys to my apartment just in case of emergencies. I suddenly remembered the few times I'd come home and found something slightly out of place. Mail stacked differently, drawers opened that I hadn't touched. I had brushed it off then, but now I knew the truth. They hadn't just abandoned me on my birthday. They had broken into my life, stolen from me, and left me with the proof in black and white. That night, my mom finally called again. Against my better judgment, I picked up. Her voice was chipper, almost relieved. "Daniel, sweetheart, don't worry about the mortgage. We handled it. Everything is fine now." My hand clenched around the phone. "You handled it?" "With my money." There was a pause. Then she sighed, the kind of sigh that always came before a lecture. "It's all the same, Daniel. You know we needed it. Family shares. You'll earn it back. But if the house was gone, where would your brother stay when he comes back from work trips? Where would we all gather? You wouldn't want that on your conscience, would you? Her tone was calm, almost soothing, like she was reasoning with a child. Like I was supposed to nod along and agree that robbing me blind was some noble family act. I didn't give you permission, I said, my voice low. You didn't need to, she replied smoothly. We're your parents. We know what's best. That was it. The line that split everything in two. They didn't see it as theft. They saw it as entitlement. My hard work, my sacrifices, my account. It was theirs for the taking because they had decided it should be. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I just let her finish, let her hang up, and sat there in silence as the weight of it all settled in. My parents had crossed a line I couldn't ignore anymore. The years of being overlooked, manipulated, used. They had finally crystallized into something undeniable. I wasn't their son in their eyes. I was their safety net, their ATM, their backup plan. And now, they had proven it in the most literal way possible. That night, I pulled out the spare keys they had to my apartment. I stared at the metal glinting in my hand, then dropped them into an envelope and sealed it shut. I wasn't going to let them walk in and out of my life anymore. Not like this. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but for the first time, my anger wasn't drowned out by guilt. It was sharp, focused, and unshakable. And as I sat there, replaying my mom's words in my head, you didn't need to, I realized they had no idea what they'd just started. The days that followed felt like a fog, the kind that clings to your skin and makes it impossible to breathe. Every time I checked my bank account, the number staring back at me felt like a slap. That money hadn't been extra, it was my safety cushion. My rent, my car payment, the groceries I budgeted so carefully each week. All gone, siphoned off without a word of apology or even the courtesy of asking. I tried to carry on with my routine, but the weight of it hung over me at work. I'd catch myself zoning out in the middle of meetings, my mind replaying the moment I pulled that withdrawal slip from the envelope. My coworkers probably thought I was tired. In reality, I was unraveling. Bills started stacking up faster than I could juggle them. My landlord sent a polite but firm reminder about the upcoming rent. My phone bill loomed. Even putting gas in my car felt like a small defeat. I had always prided myself on being independent, on never asking for help, but now I was on the edge of falling into the very hole I had spent years pulling my parents out of. The worst part wasn't the money, though. It was the silence from them about what they had done. To everyone else in the family, they acted like nothing happened. My aunt called me again, this time to say, "You should be grateful your parents are keeping the house afloat. That home will be yours and your brother's someday." I bit my tongue so hard I could taste blood. Grateful. That was the word she used. As if I should be thanking them for stealing from me. Meanwhile, my brother paraded his promotion like it was some kind of trophy. Photos of his new work laptop, his tailored suits, dinners with colleagues. It all popped up on social media. Each one felt like a reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. The provider, never the celebrated. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself to let it go, to move on. But every time I closed my eyes, I heard my mom's voice. You didn't need to. We're your parents. We know what's best. The words festered like a wound that wouldn't close. The breaking point of that low stretch came when I opened my fridge one evening and found it nearly empty. A half carton of milk, some eggs, leftover rice. I sat at the kitchen table with the dim light buzzing overhead, staring at the cracked linoleum floor. I had spent years making sure their table was full, their bills were covered, their comfort guaranteed. And here I was, scraping by, eating cold eggs for dinner. That night, I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't a burst of anger, it was quieter than that. It was the kind of realization that seeps in slowly until it hardens into resolve. If I kept playing this role, nothing would ever change. They would keep taking, keep celebrating without me, keep calling when the mortgage was due. And I would keep suffering, invisible and drained. I sat there in the silence of my apartment, surrounded by overdue bills and half-empty cupboards, and made a decision. I wouldn't confront them yet. I wouldn't shout or fight. That was what they expected. Instead, I would wait, watch, and quietly begin building something they couldn't see coming. For now, I let them think they had won, that I was broken, beaten down, too tired to fight back. But in the back of my mind, the plans were already forming, piece by piece. They didn't know it yet, but I wasn't going to be their safety net much longer. It's strange how rock bottom can make you see things differently. For weeks, I had been drowning in frustration, feeling like I was trapped in the same cycle of giving and being drained. But after that night in my kitchen, the eggs, the empty fridge, the silence, I woke up the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I went to work like usual, but instead of dragging my feet, I started looking around with new eyes. I worked in a mid-sized tech company, nothing glamorous, but steady. Up until then, I had treated it like a stepping stone, a place to collect a paycheck while keeping my head down. That morning, though, I asked myself, what if I leaned in? What if I invested the energy I'd been wasting on saving my family into saving myself? I started staying late, but not out of desperation. I asked questions in meetings, offered solutions, volunteered for projects nobody else wanted. At first, people looked at me like I'd grown a second head, but then something shifted. My manager started giving me more responsibility. Colleagues who barely noticed me before began looping me into conversations. For the first time, I wasn't just a cog. I was someone they counted on. Outside of work, I tightened the reins on my spending. I picked up freelance gigs on weekends, web design, small coding jobs, even tutoring high school students. Every extra dollar went straight into rebuilding what had been stolen. It was exhausting, sure, but it felt different now. Each late night wasn't about patching up my parents' poor decisions. It was about building a foundation for me. And slowly, the tide began to turn. 3 months after my birthday, my boss pulled me aside after a long day. "Daniel," he said, "I've been watching the way you've stepped up. We've got a new role opening on the team, project lead. I think you'd be a good fit." Interested, I tried to play it cool, but inside, my chest felt like it was going to burst. I went home that night with an offer letter in my inbox and a salary number that made my jaw drop. It wasn't millions, but it was more than enough to cover my bills, refill my savings, and give me breathing room I hadn't felt in years. At the same time, my side gigs started to take off. A website I built for a small local business got noticed, and suddenly I had more clients than I could handle. Word spread fast, and before long, I was turning people away because I didn't have enough hours in the day. My life, which had felt so suffocating and small, was expanding. Each week, I felt stronger, more capable, more in control. And with that control came a kind of quiet power I'd never experienced before. But the funny thing was, my family didn't notice any of it. To them, I was still the backup, the invisible provider. They still called occasionally, usually with some thinly veiled request. "The car's acting up again," Dad would sigh. "Your brother's planning a trip. Could you spot him a little extra?" Mom would leave voicemails about urgent needs. I listened, but I didn't bite. Not anymore. I gave them polite, empty answers, the kind that bought me time without giving them a cent. And each time I said no, or said nothing at all, I felt that power settle deeper in me. The rise wasn't flashy. I didn't suddenly buy a new car or post pictures of vacations. No, my rise was quieter. It was the kind that built brick by brick, until one day I looked around and realized I wasn't trapped in their shadow anymore. I had carved out my own life, my own success, and they hadn't even seen it happening. What they didn't know was that this quiet success was setting the stage for something much bigger. Because for the first time, I wasn't just surviving their neglect, I was preparing. And when the moment came, I'd be ready to turn all of their years of entitlement back on them. It was around 6 months after my birthday that the pieces for something bigger started falling into place. By then, my new position at work had solidified. I wasn't just another employee. I was managing a team, overseeing projects, and even sitting in meetings with senior leadership. My name was being floated around in conversations that used to be far above my head. It was surreal, almost intoxicating, to finally be seen, and not for what I could give, but for what I could do. But the real turning point came from an unexpected place: paperwork. One afternoon, I was cleaning out my desk at home when I stumbled on an old accordion folder stuffed with documents my parents had asked me to keep safe. I had forgotten it was even there. Most of it was outdated junk, old insurance statements, warranty papers, even utility bills from years ago. But tucked between the mess, I found something that made me pause: copies of mortgage statements, tax forms, and even a bank loan application with both of their signatures on it. Curiosity got the better of me, and I started flipping through the numbers. That's when I realized something that nearly knocked the air out of me. Their financial situation was worse than I ever knew. The mortgage was barely hanging on. They had refinanced multiple times, and they were drowning in credit card debt. There were late fees stacking up like bricks on their backs. And then came the part that made my blood run cold. On one of the loan applications, under assets, they had listed me. My income, my savings, even the money I had once transferred to help them. It was all written down like I was just another one of their possessions. They had claimed me as collateral in a sense, a guarantee to the bank that they would be fine because I existed. I sat there at my kitchen table, the papers spread out before me, and felt both fury and clarity settle in. To them, I wasn't Daniel. I wasn't a son, or a brother, or even a person. I was a resource, a number they could write on a form, a lifeline they could tug whenever they started sinking. And yet, hidden in that same paperwork was an opening. In their rush to use me as leverage, they had also exposed everything: their debts, their patterns, their dependencies. I knew more about their financial house of cards than even they probably realized. That knowledge felt powerful, dangerous, even. For the first time, I held the blueprint of the empire they pretended to control, and I could see every crack in the foundation. At the same time, my own footing was growing stronger. The side business I had started had taken on a life of its own. I'd registered it officially, opened a separate business account, and even brought on a freelancer to handle overflow work. I wasn't just stable. I was building something independent, untouchable, and entirely mine. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my parents and brother were still coasting on illusions, still expecting me to swoop in whenever they slipped, I was sitting quietly on information and resources that could shift the entire balance. They thought they had me trapped, but in reality, I had the keys to their undoing. And the best part? They had no idea. I started keeping detailed notes, organizing copies of the documents, building a picture of just how deeply their entitlement had burrowed into their lives. I didn't know exactly how I'd use it yet, but I knew one thing for certain. When the time came, I wouldn't just walk away. I would make sure they felt, for the first time in their lives, what it was like to be powerless. The opportunity came quietly, almost too easily, like the universe was finally handing me the moment I had been waiting for. It started with another desperate voicemail from my mom, her voice tight and trembling. "Daniel, please call us back. The bank is talking foreclosure if we don't get this payment in by the end of the month. We can't lose the house. Your brother needs somewhere to stay when he comes back. Just help us one more time. Please." The irony wasn't lost on me. After everything they had taken, after stealing from me on my own birthday, after mocking my worth with their silence, they still expected me to swoop in like a savior. But this time, I had something they didn't: the blueprint of their entire financial mess, tucked neatly in my possession. Instead of calling back, I made an appointment with the very same bank they had borrowed from. I walked in with their loan papers, the mortgage statements, the tax filings, and calmly laid everything out with the loan officer. To my surprise, he knew exactly who my parents were. "We've been trying to reach them for weeks," he said, flipping through the documents. "They're in serious default." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "I just want to make something very clear. They've been using my name, my income, even my savings on their paperwork, without my consent." The loan officer frowned and jotted down notes. "If that's true, you'll want to file a formal dispute. We'll launch an investigation." And just like that, the wheel began to turn. For years, they had leaned on me in the shadows, confident that I would never push back, never expose what they were doing. But now, every false claim, every time they had scribbled my income on a form, was about to be pulled into the light. I didn't have to scream or confront them. All I had to do was let the truth do its work. Meanwhile, I started pulling away every lifeline they still thought they had. I closed the old joint account that my mom had once begged me to keep just in case. I changed the locks on my apartment long ago, but now I went further. I froze access on anything that had even the faintest connection to them. Phone plans, insurance add-ons, all of it. Slowly, brick by brick, I dismantled the tower of dependency they had built on my back. And still, I said nothing. The silence was my sharpest weapon. They called, begged, even tried guilt. My aunt texted me late one night, saying, "Do you want your parents to end up on the street? You're being cruel." I stared at the message for a long time before replying with just 3 words, "Not my problem." By then, I knew the bank was circling closer. Notices had been sent, investigations were underway, and the pressure on them was mounting. I could almost picture it. My brother fuming at the idea of losing the house he thought he'd one day inherit, my parents scrambling to come up with explanations. And then, the first real crack appeared. A cousin posted a cryptic story on social media. A photo of my parents' house with a realtor's sign staked in the yard. My phone buzzed minutes later with a message from my brother. "What did you do?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The beauty of it all was that I hadn't lifted a finger in anger. I hadn't screamed or stormed out or begged them to see me differently. I had simply stopped being their safety net, and the entire illusion of control they'd built came crashing down on its own. And the best part? They had no one else to blame but themselves. The fallout came faster than even I expected. Within weeks, the bank had confirmed what I already knew. My parents had falsely used my information on multiple loan applications. I didn't need to press charges. The investigation itself was enough. Their lines of credit were frozen, penalties piled up, and the house that had once been their pride and joy was officially scheduled for foreclosure. When the notice went public, the mask they had worn for years cracked. Suddenly, the same relatives who had laughed with them at dinners and praised my brother's every move began whispering behind their backs. I heard through the grapevine that my brother had an explosive meltdown when he realized his inheritance wasn't a mansion waiting in the wings, but a debt-ridden property on the verge of being auctioned. My parents tried one last time to turn it back on me. They showed up at my apartment unannounced, pounding on the door. I didn't answer, but through the peephole I saw my dad red-faced and furious, my mom in tears. Her voice carried through the door. "Daniel, you've ruined us. How could you betray your own family like this?" The irony of that word, betray, nearly made me laugh. I thought of my birthday, of the empty fridge, of the withdrawal slip they had left so casually in my mailbox. I thought of every time they had dismissed me, minimized me, used me. And now, standing safely on the other side of a locked door, I finally felt the power balance shift completely. I didn't open the door. I didn't give them the satisfaction of a fight. Instead, I slid a single envelope under the crack. Inside was the spare key they had once demanded I give them for emergencies. A key they had used to steal from me. A key that symbolized the grip they thought they had on my life. Their voices fell silent when they saw it. There was no shouting after that, no pounding, just silence. Weeks later, I drove past the house one last time. The lawn was overgrown, the windows shuttered, the realtor's sign weathered from rain. For a moment, I remembered childhood birthdays, family dinners, laughter that had once filled those walls. But then I remembered the truth. That house had never been a home for me. It had been a stage where I played the role they assigned, provider, backup, afterthought. Now it was gone. As I pulled away, my phone buzzed with another message from my mom. Just 5 words. "We have nowhere to go." I stared at it for a long time, then locked my phone and set it face down on the seat beside me. For the first time in my life, their problems weren't mine to carry. The finality of that moment washed over me, not with anger, but with calm. They had built their lives on the assumption that I would always bend, always break for them. But I didn't. And in refusing, I had broken the cycle for good. My last thought as I drove away was simple, almost freeing. Let them ask the ones they celebrate. I'm not the kind of person who holds a grudge. Or at least, I wasn't, until my brother laughed in my face and dropped my wallet into a sewer grate like it was some kind of joke. That moment didn't come out of nowhere. It was the breaking point, sure, but not the beginning. If you'd asked me a year ago if I'd ever go no contact with my own family, I would have said never. I believed in loyalty, in family bonds, in giving second chances, maybe even third or fourth. But when someone grinds your dignity into the dirt, and your own father shrugs like you deserved it, something inside you changes. That morning, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just made a decision. And by the time the sun rose, everything was already in motion. His car, his bank, his girlfriend. One by one, it all came crashing down. But let me start at the beginning, because if you don't know who I am or what kind of family I come from, none of this will make sense. My name's Jake, I'm 31, and I've always been the responsible one in the family. That's not me bragging, by the way. It's more of a curse than a compliment. I was the kid who never got in trouble, who brought home report cards with straight A's, who kept quiet at the dinner table so dad wouldn't blow up. My younger brother Tyler, though, total opposite. He was the golden boy. The boys will be boys, excuse personified. He crashed mom's Camry when he was 17 after sneaking out to meet some girl. and my parents covered the damages like it was no big deal. Meanwhile, when I accidentally scratched a neighbor's fence with my bike at 12, I had to paint their whole deck in 90-degree heat as punishment. That's the kind of dynamic we had. Tyler messed up, and I paid for it, one way or another. I moved out at 19, the day after I graduated high school. Got a scholarship, worked part-time at a campus bookstore, and never looked back. I built my life slowly: college degree, decent job in logistics, a reliable car, and eventually a modest condo. Nothing flashy. I wasn't rich, but I was stable. Tyler, on the other hand, floated. He tried community college twice and dropped out both times. Worked odd jobs, moved back home every 6 months when he couldn't pay rent. And still, my parents, mostly my dad, acted like he was a misunderstood genius who just hadn't found his path yet. The thing is, I didn't resent Tyler at first. I even helped him out a few times. Gave him a place to crash when he had a fight with a roommate. Co-signed a phone plan. Huge mistake. And once sent him $500 when he claimed his paycheck got delayed. Every time, I told myself it was just a one-off. He'd grow up eventually. But it never stopped. He took advantage, plain and simple. And I didn't fully realize how bad it was until Mom passed away. That was a year ago. Sudden aneurysm. One minute she was texting me a recipe for chicken pot pie, and the next, I was driving 4 hours to the hospital, praying she'd wake up. She didn't. Her passing shattered me. She was the only real buffer between me and the rest of the family. The only one who saw through Tyler's crap and occasionally called him out. After the funeral, everything got colder, quieter, and then, somehow worse. Dad fell into this weird state of detachment. Not sadness, not anger, just apathy. Like the only person he ever listened to was gone, and now the world just didn't matter. He started leaning more into Tyler, giving him money, letting him move back in permanently, letting him borrow the car, even though Tyler had wrecked 2 already. Meanwhile, I was barely hearing from either of them. Unless, of course, Tyler needed something. Which brings us to 2 weeks ago. That was the day he asked me for $15,000. I was at work when the call came in. I recognized the number immediately, Dad's landline. I didn't pick up. 5 seconds later, Tyler texted, "Bro, I really need to talk. Call me ASAP." Against my better judgment, I did. And of course, it wasn't really talking. It was begging, dressed up in fake urgency. "Jake, listen, man. I wouldn't ask unless it was serious. I'm starting this auto detailing business. I just need 15 grand to get the van, tools, insurance." I cut him off right there. "No." He blinked through the FaceTime screen like he didn't hear me right. "Wait, what?" Just like that. I said, "No, Tyler. You've already flaked on 2 jobs this year. You dropped out again. You owe Dad 3 grand already. I'm not giving you $15,000 to blow on some pipe dream." He stared at me, then scoffed. "Wow. So that's it? After everything I've done for you?" I almost laughed. "What exactly have you done for me, Ty?" He didn't have an answer. Just hung up. I figured that would be the end of it. It wasn't. The next weekend, I had to swing by Dad's house to drop off some paperwork for Mom's estate. She'd left behind a few loose ends, accounts that needed closing, stuff with her insurance. Tyler was outside when I pulled in, leaning against the hood of Dad's car, arms crossed like he was waiting for me. I debated just backing out and coming another day, but I knew that would only prolong the drama. As I stepped out of the car, I made sure my wallet was zipped up tight in my jacket. I always kept cash on hand. Old habit from when I used to deliver for DoorDash part-time. And that week I'd just hit the ATM to grab rent money for a friend I was helping out. Stupid, I know. I shouldn't have had that much on me. But I did. Tyler walked up as I headed to the door. "Hey," he said, in that fake chummy voice he used when he wanted something. I didn't stop. Not in the mood, Ty. He followed me up the porch. "Look, I know we had words, but I was serious about the business. I got a guy who's willing to sell his whole kit for cheap, but I gotta move fast." I turned, exasperated. "You're still going on about that?" I said no. End of story. He grinned, this smug little smirk that made my skin crawl. "You always think you're better than me, don't you?" "No," I said. "I just think I'm not dumb enough to loan 15 grand to a guy who thinks kit is a business plan." He didn't take it well. His jaw tensed. His eyes flicked down to my jacket pocket. I felt something shift in the air. He shrugged and turned away, muttering something under his breath, and I figured he was done. 10 minutes later, after I'd handed off the papers to Dad, who barely looked up from his recliner, I stepped back out onto the porch. My jacket felt lighter. I checked the pocket. Empty. Tyler, I shouted, turning toward the driveway. He was already walking down the sidewalk with his phone in hand, not even trying to look innocent. Where's my wallet? He turned slowly, like it was a joke. Oh, that thing. What did you do? He pointed toward the curb, where the storm drain gaped open like a metal mouth. Whoops, he said, grinning. Must have slipped. I walked over in disbelief, peered down, and yeah, there it was. Lodged between two rusted grates, barely visible, my leather wallet. The one I'd had for 6 years. The one that had over $2,000 in it. You psycho, I said, barely keeping my voice level. That's my rent. That's someone else's rent. That's my license, my cards, everything. He just shrugged. You should have been more careful with it. I looked back at Dad through the screen door. He hadn't moved. You saw that, right? You're gonna say something. Dad didn't even blink. You shouldn't carry that much cash anyway. That's when something inside me snapped. But I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I didn't fight. I just went home. Sat in my car for 20 minutes with my fingers clenched around the wheel. My knuckles turned white. My throat was tight. But I didn't cry. I just started thinking. And by the time I walked into my apartment, I already knew what I was going to do. The best revenge doesn't happen in the heat of the moment. It happens when you let the fire simmer. And mine was just getting started. I didn't sleep that night. Not a wink. I just lay there staring at the ceiling while a slow, cold wave settled over me. The kind of stillness that only shows up when you finally stop pretending someone's going to change. I wasn't just angry about the wallet or the money. It was the look in Tyler's eyes when he did it. The smugness, like he knew I wouldn't do anything about it. Like he thought he could get away with it again. But what haunted me more than anything was Dad's face. The blank expression. The apathy. Like my humiliation was just an inconvenience to be ignored. I'd expected more. Not much, maybe, but something. A flicker of disappointment. A sigh. Anything to show he still remembered which one of us had been the adult all these years. Instead, I got silence. That night was when something finally snapped. I wasn't going to be the good son anymore. The quiet one. The peacemaker. I was done handing out olive branches while they were sharpening knives behind my back. I decided I wouldn't raise my voice. I wouldn't fight. I'd just watch. And when the time came, I'd make it count. The days that followed were weirdly quiet. Tyler didn't text. Dad didn't call. I didn't reach out either. But the silence didn't mean nothing was happening. In fact, it was the beginning of a shift I don't think they even noticed at first. The first crack came 3 days later. I was at work, trying to get through inventory prep, when I got a call from Claire, my dad's neighbor. Sweet woman. Probably in her late 60s. She'd always liked me more than Tyler, which was saying something since she'd only met us a few times. Jake, honey, she said, voice hushed. I don't mean to meddle, but is everything okay with your brother? I paused, already suspicious. Why? Well, he was out on the curb this morning, yelling into his phone. Something about rent money and people being late. Said he was going to come after someone if they didn't pay up. I sighed. That sounds about right. Claire hesitated. He mentioned your name. I froze. What do you mean? He said, let me think. Jake better come through, or I swear, I'll make him wish he had. I didn't say anything. Jake, are you in trouble? No, I said slowly. But he might be. Tyler, it turned out, had already spent the money he thought I was going to give him. Rented a rundown van from some sketchy guy off Craigslist. Paid for a custom decal, T-Rex detailing, we eat dirt alive. Because of course he did. He'd even gone as far as putting down a deposit on a shared workshop space on the outskirts of town. All without ever confirming that I was going to fund it. And now he was scrambling. I didn't respond to his texts. I didn't pick up his calls. But the messages kept coming. You're seriously going to do me like this? Do you want me to fail? You think you're better than me? You've always been jealous. That one made me laugh. Jealous of what exactly? The endless debt? The constant scrambling? The complete lack of self-awareness? Then came the voicemail. You better call me back, Jake. I'm not playing. I'll come over if I have to. I played it twice, then forwarded it to my backup drive. The next weekend, I had to visit Dad again. Not for any social reason. There were more estate forms to sign and a few last things from Mom's storage unit that needed my signature before being released. I dreaded every second of it, but I kept my face neutral and my voice polite. Like always, Dad barely acknowledged me when I came in, just pointed to the table where the forms sat. I signed them in silence. Then I asked, "Where's Tyler?" Dad grunted. "Out. Something about a business deal." I raised an eyebrow. "Did he tell you what kind of business?" Dad shrugged. "Don't start, Jake." "I'm just curious," I said calmly. "You know he dropped my wallet in a sewer last week, right?" "That was an accident," Dad muttered. "An accident?" "He told me he did it on purpose." He was upset. "You antagonized him." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "He stole from me. You saw it. And your response is that I antagonized him." Dad's eyes narrowed. "He needed help. You're the one with the job, the money, the nice apartment. You could have spared some." There it was. The part they never said out loud until now. The part one always suspected. I stood still for a long second, my hand resting on the back of the dining chair. I looked at my father, really looked at him. The deep lines around his mouth. The vacant eyes. The bitter edge in his voice. It wasn't grief anymore. It was something else. Something uglier. "I've helped him more times than I can count," I said, voice quiet. "And he's never once paid me back. Not in money, not in respect, not even a simple thank you." Dad didn't reply. I think Mom would have agreed with me. That got a reaction. His jaw clenched. But he still didn't speak. I left without another word. Over the next few weeks, things escalated fast. Tyler's little business collapsed before it even started. The workshop owner kicked him out when the second payment didn't come through. The Craigslist guy reported the van as stolen after Tyler failed to sign the title over properly. And the custom decal? He tried to get a refund, but apparently yelling at a print shop manager isn't the best negotiation strategy. I stayed quiet. Until one afternoon, about a month after the sewer incident, when the real betrayal happened. It was a Friday. I'd taken a half day at work to meet with a financial planner. I'd recently gotten a promotion, and I was finally in a place where I could think about long-term investments. I was feeling good, hopeful even. Then I got a call from my bank. "Hi, this is Jenna from Client Security Services. We're calling about a flagged transaction on your checking account." My stomach dropped. Someone attempted to withdraw $4,800 from a branch location about 2 hours ago. They had your name, your account number, and your license. I blinked. My license? That's impossible. I stopped. It was in the wallet. The one Tyler dropped in the sewer. The one he'd joked about. My voice was flat. Was the withdrawal successful? "No, sir," she said. "Our teller noticed inconsistencies with the signature. And your account had been flagged after multiple failed online login attempts earlier this week." I didn't make any login attempts. That's what we figured. I drove straight to the branch and reviewed the security footage with the manager. It was Tyler, plain as day, wearing my license like a name tag and trying to pretend his signature matched mine. That wasn't just theft. That was fraud. I filed the report, locked the account, changed everything. And then I sat in my car in the bank parking lot for a long time. I stared at the steering wheel. I remembered Tyler as a kid, how he used to beg me to let him sneak into my room to play with my Legos. How he once cried when I told him I was moving out for college. How he hugged me after Mom's funeral, saying, "I don't know what I'd do without you." And then I remembered the sewer grate, the smirk, the voicemail, and now this. That was the breaking point. That night, I didn't sleep. But not because I was angry, because I was planning. I was done waiting for him to hit rock bottom. I was going to hand him the shovel and make sure the hole he dug was too deep to climb out of. But it had to be quiet, precise. No mess, no traces, and I knew exactly where to start. By 6:15 a.m., everything was already in motion, and by the time the sun rose, Tyler's life as he knew it was already unraveling. But I'll get to that soon, because what happened next? Even I didn't see it coming. You'd think that filing a police report on your own brother would feel satisfying, that some deep, long-buried sense of justice would light up inside you like a bonfire. But for me, it didn't feel like that at all. It felt like grief, a slow, quiet kind, the kind that doesn't come with tears or screaming, but just sits in your chest, heavy, constant, like a boulder you can't lift, only learn to carry. After the bank incident, I thought things might get easier, like maybe that would be the end of it. That Tyler would finally realize I wasn't going to save him anymore. That maybe Dad would finally stop acting like I was the problem. But that wasn't what happened. 2 days later, Dad called me for the first time in over a month. No greeting, no small talk, just one sentence. "Did you really file charges against your own brother?" I didn't respond at first. I just let the silence stretch. Then I said, "He committed fraud. That's a felony." Dad huffed like I was being dramatic. You always blow things out of proportion. He made a mistake. I laughed, sharp, bitter. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. A mistake is backing into a mailbox. This was theft. Identity theft. He was desperate. I stared at the wall of my apartment, the familiar pictures, the old bookshelf Mom helped me build years ago. I didn't even know what to say anymore. He stole from me, Dad. He tried to impersonate me. If the bank hadn't caught it, I'd be out almost $5,000. Dad's voice turned cold. You're punishing him for being poor. That was the moment I realized my father didn't see us as equals. He never had. To him, Tyler was the broken one, the one who needed protection. And me? I was the one who was supposed to fix everything, no matter what it cost. So I did what I should have done a long time ago. I hung up, and I blocked his number. The fallout came fast. Tyler showed up at my condo a few nights later, pounding on the door like a maniac. I didn't answer. He left a voice message instead. 3 minutes of slurred threats and self-pity. You're ruining my life, man. All because I asked you for help. You think you're better than everyone. Just wait. Just wait. You'll regret this. I swear to God you'll. I didn't listen to the rest. I just saved the voicemail, labeled it, and filed it away. I filed everything away. Bank logs, texts, old loan receipts, copies of the failed co-signed phone bill from 2020. Even the stupid Instagram post he made bragging about getting that bread the week after he stole my wallet. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was documenting, preparing. But while I was bracing for war, life didn't pause for me. The stress leaked into everything. I started waking up at 3 a.m. with chest tightness. I was late on 2 work projects. My manager, who had always liked me, pulled me aside one day and said gently, "Hey, I don't know what's going on, but I can tell you're not okay. Take a few days. Get your head right." So I did. I took 3 days off and stayed inside. No phone, no TV, just silence and coffee and a spiral notebook I found buried in my junk drawer. And I wrote. Not a novel, not a plan, just thoughts, memories, anger, regret, things I never said to Tyler, things I wanted to say to Dad, things I wished I'd told Mom before she passed, things I never even admitted to myself. It all poured out, page after page. I must have filled that notebook halfway by the time I came up for air. That was the moment I started to rise. Not in some dramatic, cinematic way, but quietly, privately. For the first time in years, I wasn't fixing someone else's mess. I was cleaning my own house, inside and out. I started going to the gym again. Not because I wanted abs, but because I needed somewhere to put all that tension. The ache, the fury. I lifted weights like they'd personally wronged me. I finally reconnected with old friends. People I'd pulled away from out of shame or exhaustion. One of them, Evan, had just started a new tech startup, and after a few hangouts, he asked if I'd consider consulting on their logistics system. It wasn't a full-time job, just a side gig, but it paid well and gave me something new to focus on. A spark. I reworked my finances, too. Opened new accounts. Invested more aggressively. Started planning for the future again. And the biggest change? I started therapy. Just once a week at first. I didn't expect much from it, honestly. But sitting across from someone who listened without judgment, who asked me questions no one in my family ever had, it was like someone had finally pulled a splinter from my brain I didn't even know was there. "Why do you think you kept helping him?" my therapist, Grace, asked one day. I paused, then said, "Because if I didn't, no one would." She nodded. "And what made you believe that was your responsibility?" That one sat with me for a long time. The truth is, I'd built my whole identity around being the reliable one, the fixer, the helper. I thought that was love. I thought that was what family meant. But it wasn't love. It was fear. Fear that if I stopped being useful, I'd stop being loved. And when Mom died, I stopped being useful. So they stopped trying. That realization hurt more than anything Tyler ever did. But it also freed me. Once I saw it clearly, I stopped carrying their weight. I stopped measuring my worth by their standards. And little by little, I started living for me. I built new routines. I made space for joy again. I cooked actual meals. I took walks. I bought myself a nice watch. Nothing fancy, just something that made me feel like I was allowed to own nice things. Then, about 6 weeks after the fraud attempt, I got the call. It was from Detective Morgan, the officer assigned to the case. "We've got a bit of an update for you," he said. I braced myself. "Your brother just got picked up for trying to use another fake ID at a car rental kiosk." Apparently, he was trying to book a car in your name again. But the flag on your license popped up in the system. When they ran his info, the fraud charge came up. I was quiet. So what now? Well, we'll be pressing charges. But it's up to you how far you want to take it. I didn't answer right away. That night, I sat on my balcony with a beer and stared out at the city lights. I thought about Tyler sitting in a holding cell, probably blaming everyone but himself. I thought about Dad, too, wondering if he was angry or if he even cared. And then I thought about the day I found out Mom had died. How Tyler had been the one to call me. How he was sobbing, genuinely sobbing. I can't do this without her, he'd said. And for a moment, I believed him. But the truth was, he wasn't crying for Mom. He was crying because she wasn't there to protect him anymore. And I wasn't going to do it in her place. I called Detective Morgan back the next morning. I want to proceed, I said. Understood, he replied. We'll keep you updated. Things moved quickly after that. Tyler was released on bond, but a court date was set. I didn't attend the hearing in person, just submitted my evidence and statements. The bank records, the voicemail, the footage. My lawyer said it was airtight. And it was. Tyler pled guilty to attempted fraud and received 6 months probation and mandatory counseling. No jail time. Partly because it was his first formal offense, but the charge would stay on his record. Dad didn't call me once. Not to yell. Not to defend him. Not even to ask why. That silence. That was the real sentence. And still, somehow, it didn't hurt anymore. Because by then, I wasn't standing in their shadow anymore. I was standing on my own. A few months later, I got promoted again. This time to Regional Logistics Coordinator. Better pay. Better hours. I moved into a new apartment. One with a balcony that overlooked the river. I furnished it with care. Bought plants. A decent espresso machine. Even framed some of my old notebook pages. Not because they were deep or poetic. Most of them were angry scribbles. But because they reminded me where I'd been. What I'd survived. And what I'd built without anyone's help. One morning, I checked my mail and found a letter with no return address. Just my name. Inside was a single piece of paper, torn from a notebook. No greeting. No apology. Just 4 words. You never loved me. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. I folded the paper once, slid it back into the envelope, and dropped it in the trash. Because the truth was, he was right. I tried. God, I tried. For years, I tried. But love without respect? That's not love. That's a leash. And I wasn't wearing it anymore. But if you think that's where it ends, you'd be wrong. Because Tyler wasn't done. Not yet. The next blow came when I least expected it. And it wasn't just about me. It was about someone I actually cared about. And this time, he went too far. Way too far. When Tyler crossed the line from being a toxic brother to a criminal liability, something inside me shifted permanently. The days of playing the reluctant adult in a broken family drama were over. He didn't just betray me financially. He tried to steal my identity, my security, my peace of mind. And now, with him finally convicted of attempted fraud, I should have felt like the worst was behind me. But Tyler never knew when to stop. 3 months after his sentencing, just when life was settling back into something resembling normal, I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from in years. Jake. Her voice was soft. Familiar. Ella. Ella was an ex. The kind of ex you don't talk about often because it still aches, even years later. We dated for almost 2 years, back when I was in my mid-20s. She'd been everything I wasn't, spontaneous, artistic, full of life. We broke up because she wanted to move out west to pursue photography full-time, and I was too buried in work and family drama to follow her. We parted on good terms, but we hadn't spoken since. I wasn't sure if I should call, she said. But I thought you'd want to know. Know what? She hesitated. Tyler messaged me. I felt my stomach drop. What? He found my photography page and sent me a long message. Said you were spreading lies about him. That you ruined his life and sabotaged his future. He said you were dangerous. I had to sit down. I blocked him, she continued. But he sent another message through a different account. He even mentioned stuff only someone close to you would know. Stuff from back when we were together. Why would he come after you? She exhaled. I think he's trying to get to you through me. And just like that, the final straw wasn't just planted. It was driven into the ground like a flag. Tyler wasn't just self-destructing anymore. He was actively trying to drag me down with him. Even from the outside, even with probation hanging over his head, he wanted to remind me he could still reach in and poison something I cared about. He wasn't going to stop. Unless I made him. Not just through legal consequences. Not just through blocking and ignoring. I needed to dismantle the world he operated in. The little ecosystem of pity and favoritism that had allowed him to float through life untouched. And I knew exactly where to start. Dad. The man who always turned a blind eye. Who funded Tyler's failures and called it support. Who justified every betrayal as a misunderstanding. Dad had enabled him for 31 years. If I was going to cut the rod out, I couldn't just target Tyler. I had to expose the whole foundation. And I already had the ammo. Over the past year, I'd been quietly collecting everything. Every debt, every voicemail, every favor Tyler had begged for and never paid back. I had bank records, texts, even a copy of the forged withdrawal form with his fake signature. But more than that, I had patterns. A trail. So I started mapping it all out. Not in a notebook this time, but digitally, meticulously. I made a timeline of Tyler's financial wreckage. When he borrowed money, what he promised, when he ghosted. I included the time he totaled Dad's car and blamed a ghost driver. The fake GoFundMe he set up 3 years ago for surgery, that never happened. The dozens of unpaid gigs he took from mutual friends and then vanished from. I tracked every instance and tied it to screenshots, audio clips, even pulled photos from his own social media to prove location and date. Then, I put it all in a single, clean document. A dossier. Professional. Cold. Unarguable. And then I waited. I needed an opportunity. Something that would bring everyone together at once. A moment where the mask couldn't be worn and denial couldn't be hidden behind phone calls or texts. That opportunity came in the form of Dad's birthday. He was turning 65, retirement age. And despite everything, he still hadn't formally retired. Probably because Tyler needed the money to keep flowing. But this time, Dad was throwing a party. I'm just inviting close friends and family, he said in the group text. No drama, please. I wasn't going to go at first. I hovered over the delete button for 10 straight minutes. But then I realized, this was it. The setup. The moment where I could make a point so loud, so calculated, that even Tyler couldn't spin it. So I replied, sure. I'll be there. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. First, I met with a lawyer. Not because I was planning to sue anyone, yet, but because I wanted everything I had to be ironclad. Verified. Ready for scrutiny. She helped me structure it all as a formal report, just in case I ever needed to present it in a civil case. Then I reached out to a few of Tyler's burned bridges. A friend he'd stiffed for $800 in a group trip. A girl he ghosted after borrowing her car and returning it with a dent. Even a cousin he scammed into paying for a non-existent DJ gig. I didn't frame it as revenge. I just told them I was compiling a financial history and asked if they'd be willing to contribute statements. Most were eager. One of them even forwarded an audio recording Tyler left during a drunken rant where he said, Jake's not family anymore. He's just a paycheck I lost. That one went right into the front of the file. By the day of the party, the folder had grown fat, digitally and physically. I had a PDF version on a thumb drive, a printed copy in a clean black binder, and a backup stored in the cloud under a pseudonym. I wasn't taking chances. The party itself was held at a local event hall. Nothing fancy, just tables, banners, and cheap catering. But there were maybe 50 people there. Friends of Dad's, old co-workers, neighbors, even a couple of distant aunts I hadn't seen since Mom's funeral. And Tyler, of course. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him. Eyes bloodshot, wearing an ill-fitting blazer, a forced smile plastered on his face like a poorly glued mask. He gave me a look when I walked in, equal parts panic and contempt. He hadn't expected me to show. I nodded politely, walked past him, sat near the front. I waited for the toasts to start. Dad was glowing in the attention, soaking in the praise. Tyler kept hovering around him, playing the dutiful son, probably hoping some rich friend of Dad's would pull him aside and offer him a job or pity gig. When the host asked if anyone else wanted to speak, I stood. It wasn't a dramatic gesture. No clinking of glasses. No clearing of throats. Just me, calmly walking up to the microphone. I held up the black binder. I'm Jake. Most of you know me. I'm Richard's son. People nodded. A few clapped politely. I just wanted to share a few things about my brother Tyler. The room shifted. Eyes darted. Tyler froze mid-sip of his drink. I smiled. Some of you may have lent him money. Some of you may have heard stories about me sabotaging him. And I just want to say, I believe in clarity. I opened the binder. This is a record of every financial, legal, and personal favor Tyler has received and defaulted on since 2014. Verified by receipts, screenshots, and personal statements. It includes fraud charges, unpaid debts, scams, and abusive messages. The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I'm not here to embarrass him. I'm here because I've been painted as the villain for too long. Because our father has spent over a decade defending him at my expense. And because some people still believe Tyler is just misunderstood. I looked directly at Dad. I just wanted to make sure everyone had the facts. And with that, I stepped down, left the binder on the main table, and walked out. I didn't need to stay for the fallout. I already knew it had started. Because the truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to be seen. But if you think that was the end, if you think Tyler just slunk off and disappeared, you don't know my brother. Because what he did next wasn't just desperate. It was dangerous. He didn't leave the party quietly. I'd barely made it back to my car when the screaming started behind me. You think this makes you a hero? Tyler shouted from the doorway of the hall, his voice cracked and desperate, arms flailing like a drowning man who just realized the water was too deep. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. By the time I got home that evening, my phone had 6 missed calls, 4 voicemails, and 3 block number texts filled with nonsense like, "You ruined everything. You'll regret this. I swear. You just made an enemy for life." But here's the thing about Tyler. He'd never been subtle. Not once in his life. And in the weeks after the party, his spiral didn't slow down. It accelerated. Fast. He lost his freelance detailing clients. Turns out, a conviction for attempted fraud isn't great for business. He tried to pin it all on me, of course, claiming I'd doctored the evidence, but the people who mattered, Dad's friends, old coworkers, even family, had seen the binder. They'd read the quotes, heard the recordings. One uncle even asked for a copy of the PDF so he could send it to a guy Tyler had owed money to for 3 years. Dad didn't speak to me after the party, but I heard through the grapevine that his retirement gift, a small consulting gig at his old firm, got rescinded the following Monday. Apparently, the partners didn't feel comfortable being associated with a man who defended a known fraudster in front of 50 witnesses. I'd expected Dad to reach out, to yell, to accuse. He didn't. He just went silent. And honestly, that stung more than if he'd screamed. But it also confirmed everything I needed to know. I wasn't his son. Not really. I was his scapegoat. And now that I wasn't willing to wear the blame anymore, I was nothing to him. Fine. I could live with that. But Tyler couldn't. He wasn't just embarrassed. He was enraged. So he did the one thing I wasn't expecting. He tried to get revenge. Messy, desperate revenge. At first, it was small stuff, petty sabotage attempts. Someone keyed my car one night while I was parked outside the gym. A fake Yelp review popped up on the startup I consulted for, claiming I was stealing client data. The IP address, traced to a public Wi-Fi hub 1 block from Dad's house. I didn't flinch. I just documented it. Every email, every message, every fake review. I even installed a dash cam after the car incident, which paid off when it caught Tyler himself tossing a cup of soda onto my windshield a week later. And that's when I stopped reacting defensively and started pulling strings. Because here's something Tyler never figured out. While he was torching bridges and begging for bailouts, I'd been building quiet relationships with people who knew how the system worked. And now, I had names, emails, leverage. It started with the probation officer. I sent a formal complaint with the timestamped dashcam video and a signed affidavit outlining the ongoing harassment, the voicemail threats, the IP address links, everything. The officer responded professionally, but firmly. "Thank you for your detailed documentation. We will be reviewing this case for potential probation violation." Then I contacted the county detective from the original fraud charge. He remembered me, and he didn't like repeat offenders, especially ones who used identity theft twice. He looped in a cybercrimes liaison, and suddenly, Tyler's little fake review stunt, that became evidence of defamation and digital harassment against not just me, but the business I was affiliated with. That's when it stopped being just a sibling squabble. It became a legal pattern, a real case. Within a week, Tyler was back in front of a judge. His attorney, some court-appointed guy with dark circles under his eyes and a visible tremor, tried to paint it all as brotherly misunderstandings. But the evidence said otherwise. 3 counts of harassment, 1 count of digital defamation, and a clear violation of probation. The judge wasn't amused. I gave you an opportunity, she said, tone clipped. And you spat in the court's face. Result? Probation revoked. Sentence converted to 90 days in county jail. No bail. The day Tyler was taken into custody, I got a text from an unknown number. You finally happy? I didn't reply, but I saved the number anyway, just in case. Fallout came quickly after that. Dad, now isolated and disgraced, sent me a letter. Not a call. Not an email. A letter. It was short. 4 sentences. I don't know what you think you've accomplished. Family should stick together, no matter what. You've made enemies you'll regret. Don't come to my funeral. No signature. No return address. I folded it once. Put it in the back of my filing cabinet. Not out of sentiment, but because I wanted to remember the exact moment I stopped chasing approval that was never coming. In the weeks that followed, I finished out the consulting gig and was offered a full-time position with stock options. The company liked my attention to detail, my integrity, my cool head under pressure. I said yes. I started dating again. Nothing serious, just dipping my toes in. But it felt good to laugh with someone. To talk about movies and books instead of lawsuits and bank statements. I even visited Mom's grave for the first time in over a year. I brought coffee, sat down, told her everything. I like to think she would have been proud, not just because I stood up for myself, but because I did it without becoming bitter. I didn't burn everything to the ground, just the parts that were already rotten. Tyler served 68 days before being released for good behavior. He moved in with some friend of a friend an hour away. I heard he was working warehouse shifts now. Manual labor. No license. No car. No business. No one left to blame. And Dad? He sold the house. Retired somewhere upstate. Never sent a forwarding address. Fine by me. The past, I've learned, doesn't always need closure. Sometimes it just needs distance. Now, when I think about my family, I don't feel guilt, or rage, or longing. I feel clean. Like I walked out of a burning house that everyone else swore was safe, and somehow, I made it out without a single scar. Just smoke on my clothes. And a story, one I'm finally done telling. Because the truth is, some people don't deserve your silence. And some bridges aren't meant to be crossed. They're meant to be burned. I've had enough of my parents. Honestly, I've been fed up for years, but this one takes the cake. This whole situation started with a vacation. A luxury vacation, no less. And the worst part? I paid for it. But, of course, that's not the story. The real story is how I ended up walking away from it, mid-trip, after I realized just how far they'd pushed me. Let me backtrack a bit. My name's James, I'm 26, and for as long as I can remember, I've always been the kind of person who wanted to make my parents proud. The only problem is, no matter what I did, nothing was ever good enough for them. I could ace every test in school, win every competition, land every job, but there was always something else. But at the end of every compliment. You did great on that project, but you should have gotten a promotion already. Or, that's a nice paycheck, but you could be making more if you weren't so focused on that side hustle. It's exhausting. But here's the thing, I'm not a failure. I'm doing well for myself now. I have a decent job, and I've been working my tail off for years to get to a place where I don't have to worry about money or living paycheck to paycheck. I've put in the work. And yet, there's this constant feeling with my parents that nothing's ever enough, that I should always be doing more. So when my parents started talking about this luxury vacation they wanted to take, I wasn't exactly thrilled. We're talking about a 5-star resort, a private beach, fancy dinners every night, and spa treatments on the regular. It was expensive, and they wanted me to foot the bill. You'd think I'd just say no, right? But that's not how my parents operate. There's a lot of guilt tripping involved, a lot of "you don't want us to be miserable, do you?" And "we worked so hard to give you everything, and now we just want to enjoy a nice vacation together." After months of hearing the same thing, I finally caved. I figured, okay, maybe it'll be a nice break. Maybe, just maybe, it would be a chance for us to bond. The problem? I wasn't just paying for my part of the trip. I was paying for everything. Sure, I could afford it, but the whole time I was dreading it. And when we finally got to the resort, it only got worse. The first night, my parents didn't even bother to hide it. As soon as we were seated at the dinner table, my mom glanced at the menu and said, "It's so nice to have a son who can afford this kind of thing. We can't even imagine spending this much on ourselves." My dad, not missing a beat, said, "Yeah, we would have never done this if it weren't for you." They both laughed like it was some kind of joke. It wasn't funny. It was humiliating. They weren't even trying to make me feel appreciated. They were rubbing it in my face. Every time I went to pay for something, they'd make a comment about how much I was helping them out. I was the big hero who was paying for their lavish getaway, and they didn't even care enough to pretend like they were grateful. But the worst part? It was all just the same old game, the same old dynamic. I was the provider, and they were the takers, and it was never going to be enough for them. By the third day, I was already fed up. Every meal, every spa visit, every excursion we went on, I was the one pulling out my card. They barely said thank you. Instead, they just casually mentioned how nice it was to have a son who made it, but that I still had a long way to go. As if the vacation was some kind of test. As if I had to prove something. I started to think about what it would be like to just walk away, to leave, to stop playing their game. But I told myself it was just a thought and that I'd stick it out. Maybe things would get better. Maybe I was just overthinking it. Then came the moment that broke the camel's back. We were sitting at the pool after a long day, and my dad turned to me, glass in hand, and said, "You know, James, if you really want to make something of yourself, you need to stop wasting money on stuff like this. You've got a good job, but you could be doing a lot more. You should have already bought a house by now. All this money you're spending on luxury vacations, you should be putting it into something that actually matters." It was like a slap in the face. Here I was, bending over backwards to make sure they had the best vacation they'd ever had, and this was the thanks I got? It wasn't just the comment, though. It was the way he said it, as if I was the one who was doing something wrong by trying to treat them. Like I was the one who had failed. My mom chimed in with, "You really need to stop living like this. Always spending on yourself, never saving for your future. I'm just worried about you, James." I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, excused myself, and walked straight to the concierge. I didn't even look back. I went to the front desk, asked to change my flight, and made arrangements to leave that night. I was done. The next morning, when they were still sleeping, I packed my things, checked out, and caught my flight home without saying a word. But here's the kicker. I didn't just leave. I didn't just leave them there without a word. No, I made sure they paid for their share. The thing is, when I made the reservation, I covered all of it, thinking I was being generous. But I had a change of heart, and when I checked out, I made sure I paid for just my part. I didn't cover their share. I left them to deal with it. I was already on my way to the airport when my phone started buzzing. Missed call after missed call. Text after text. "James, where are you? You can't just leave us here. You're being childish. You need to come back and pay." I just ignored it. I wasn't about to get roped into their guilt-tripping games anymore. By the time I landed, my phone was blowing up. It was my mom. It was my dad. It was every family member, demanding to know what happened, why I'd abandoned them. They even tried to make it seem like I was the bad guy. But I didn't care. I just wanted to be free from them. And now I was about to face the fallout. The moment I stepped off the plane, I could already feel the weight of the storm coming. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing the entire flight, but now that I was back home, it was like I had stepped into the eye of it. I figured it would be bad, but not this bad. My parents were relentless. Every time I looked at my phone, there were more calls, more texts, each one pushing harder for me to fix what I had done. "James, please, we can't believe you did this. We're stuck here, and it's all your fault. Come back and finish what you started. You don't just leave family hanging like this." And then, of course, the guilt trips. "You've changed. You're not the son we raised." At first, I just ignored it. The last thing I wanted to do was engage with them, but after an hour of constant notifications, I gave in. I figured I'd at least address the situation before they escalated it further. I'm not proud of the way I handled it, but I was sick of always being the one to bend. I had done enough for them. I didn't owe them another ounce of my energy. So, I picked up the phone and called them back. "Hello?" My dad answered, his voice dripping with fake calmness. "You don't need to yell at me anymore," I said, not wasting any time. "I'm not coming back. I paid for my part. You're on your own now. Deal with it." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. A long, thick silence. Then my dad spoke again, this time sounding far less collected. "James, what are you talking about? You can't just bail on us like this. You promised you'd take care of everything. You have the money. What kind of son does this to his parents?" "Apparently, the kind who's tired of being treated like a walking wallet," I shot back. "You never cared about me, just what I could give you. Every time I did something good, you found a way to twist it into a criticism. You never said thank you, just you could do more. Well, I'm done doing more. You can pay for the rest of your vacation yourselves." I'm sure you'll figure it out." I could practically hear my dad's face turning red with rage. He started rambling, stammering about how unreasonable I was, how he and my mom had sacrificed everything for me, how they had made me who I am. "Yeah, right," I cut him off, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You've done such a great job. I've been trying to get your approval my whole life, and all I've gotten is how I'm not enough. So here's the deal, Dad, I'm not your backup plan anymore. I'm done paying for things I didn't ask for and being expected to clean up your messes." I paused for a second, letting that sink in, before I added one final jab. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you kept telling me not to spend money on vacations, huh? I'm pretty sure we can't afford it," was your favorite line growing up, but suddenly it's fine when I'm footing the bill. I hung up the phone before he could say another word. The thing is, I thought that would be the end of it. I thought my parents would be embarrassed or, at the very least, angry enough to leave me alone for a while. But no, that's not how this family operates. They weren't going to let me go that easily. What I hadn't anticipated was how much my other family members, my aunts, uncles, cousins, would get involved. I hadn't even realized they were in on the group chat until I looked at my phone later that evening. I had 26 missed calls and about 30 messages from them, all demanding explanations. "James, you've gone too far. You can't just leave your parents like that. They raised you. They gave you everything. This isn't how family works. James, your parents are devastated. Don't be so selfish. They needed you. It's one vacation, one trip. What's the harm in helping them out?" I could already feel the familiar weight of guilt creeping in. Every message, every call, every comment from the family made me second-guess myself, even though deep down, I knew I was right. They were all on the side of my parents. All of them. Not a single person seemed to care about how I felt. Not a single person thought it was weird that my parents had demanded I pay for everything and then had the audacity to guilt-trip me when I finally put my foot down. That's when I realized they were all just playing the same game. Everyone in my family expected me to be the one who sacrificed, who gave, who worked myself to the bone while they sat back and enjoyed the show. But I wasn't playing anymore. Still, I couldn't ignore them forever. I had to say something. So, I responded to the group chat. "I'm not sorry. I did what I had to do, and if that upsets you, well, I guess it's a wake-up call for all of you. I'm tired of being everyone's safety net. You want to blame someone for the mess? Blame my parents for making me feel like I wasn't good enough unless I was helping them. Don't drag me into this." I sat back after sending that message and waited for the fallout. It didn't take long. "James, this is ridiculous. You're a grown man. You're acting like a child. Do you want to throw away your entire relationship with your family over one vacation?" My uncle responded, his message short and sharp. And then came the kicker. "Your parents are heartbroken. They feel abandoned. You've ruined this whole trip for them. Why would you do this to them?" But that was the thing. I wasn't doing this to them. I was doing it for me. For once, I was standing up for myself. For once, I wasn't the one who had to bear the weight of everyone else's issues. And let me tell you, after all the years of constantly giving in, hearing them all pile on to make me feel guilty, it was a bit of a relief. I was tired of being the one who had to do it all. I was tired of being the punching bag. It felt good to let them know I wasn't going to put up with it anymore. But of course, they didn't take it well. Within hours, I had more calls and messages from my parents, each one worse than the last. "We don't need you anymore," my mom said. "You've made it clear you don't care about your family. Go ahead, enjoy your lonely little life. You'll see how far your pride takes you." But it didn't end there. They weren't just angry, they were calling everyone in the family, spinning the story however they wanted to make me look like the villain. They were the victims, and I was the ungrateful son who abandoned them. It was sickening. And yet, I wasn't backing down. Not anymore. Now, the question was, how far were they willing to take this? And how far would I go to make them understand that this wasn't just about one vacation? It was about the years of manipulation and selfishness that had led me to this point. The days after my phone call with my parents felt surreal. The messages and calls didn't stop, but something strange started to happen. I began to feel this sense of liberation, like I was finally free from the invisible chains that had bound me for so long. I wasn't responsible for their happiness anymore. I wasn't the one who had to make up for their mistakes or try to get their approval. It was a strange kind of peace, one I had never experienced before. But that peace didn't last long. As expected, the family drama exploded. The group chat was now a battleground. I could feel the tension rising with every message. My cousins, aunts, uncles, and even distant relatives all chimed in, taking sides. It was like I was trapped in a whirlwind, spinning between guilt and anger as every member of my family tried to twist the narrative in their favor. My mom and dad were relentless. They called, texted, and even sent voice messages. I couldn't escape it. The first few were the usual guilt trips. Then came the threats. "You're going to regret this, James," my dad said one evening, his voice laced with venom. "You think you're some big shot now, but trust me, you're going to find out how quickly things can turn against you. You won't have a family to fall back on when you're struggling." My mom wasn't any better. "You've ruined everything. We trusted you. You promised. You're going to make us look like fools in front of the entire family. Don't ever expect us to help you again when you come crawling back." I didn't reply. I knew the power of silence. It was the one thing they couldn't manipulate. Every time they tried to get a rise out of me, I just ignored it. It was hard at first, but eventually, I started to feel a bit of pride every time I resisted. The messages got more desperate, more frantic. They were losing control, and that was something I'd never seen from them before. But here's where the story takes a turn I wasn't expecting. The family started turning on me. It wasn't just my parents anymore. It was my relatives too. They had all started to band together, telling me that I had betrayed my parents and the family as a whole. They didn't care that I'd spent years under their thumb, always the one to bail them out, always the one to carry the burden. They only saw the immediate aftermath, the fact that I had left them in a foreign country with no backup. And in their eyes, that made me the villain. My Aunt Linda, who I had always gotten along with, was the first to send me a message. She was a master at manipulation, and she wasted no time in trying to guilt trip me. "James, I thought you were better than this," she wrote. "You've really let your parents down. You know how much they've done for you. You can't just cut them off like this. Don't you care about the family? You'll regret this. You'll see." I wanted to respond. I wanted to tell her how many times my parents had let me down, how many times I had been expected to sacrifice for them, and how, at the end of the day, I was the one left to clean up their messes. But I didn't. Not yet. I wanted to let them stew for a while. I wanted to see how far they would go to paint me as the bad guy. Then came my cousin Sarah, who had always been the goody two-shoes of the family. She was the one everyone looked to as the example of what a good child should be. She had always been so quick to judge me, but this time, her message was nothing short of hypocritical. "You're making a huge mistake, James. If I were you, I would apologize right now. You can't just throw your family away like this. You'll regret it. Believe me." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sarah was the last person who should be lecturing me on family. She was the one who always turned a blind eye when my parents pulled their usual antics, the one who smiled and nodded as they manipulated and controlled everyone in their path. Now, she was the one trying to guilt trip me into submission. But what struck me the most was this. The more messages I received, the more I realized just how toxic my entire family dynamic was. It wasn't just my parents. It was everyone. They all had a stake in my obedience, in me staying silent and doing what I was told. They didn't care about me as an individual. They cared about what I could provide, how much I could sacrifice. And that realization made me angry. I had been so naive for so long, thinking that if I just did enough, if I just gave more, I'd earn their love and respect. But now, I saw it for what it really was, a never-ending cycle of manipulation, guilt, and control. And that's when I knew. I wasn't going to back down. But the stakes were higher now. This wasn't just about a vacation anymore. This was about my entire relationship with my family. About how far they would go to try to break me. And how far I was willing to go to finally stand up for myself. I spent the next few days at home, trying to figure out my next move. I knew that cutting ties completely wasn't an option, not yet. The fallout would be too much. But I also knew I couldn't just give in and pretend nothing had happened. I had to make them see that they couldn't control me anymore. The calls and messages kept coming, but I stayed quiet. Then, one evening, I got a message from my dad. It was short, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. "You've really gone too far this time, James. You'll see. We won't forget this." I stared at the message for a while, the weight of his words sinking in. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew one thing for sure. Things were about to get a whole lot worse. And I wasn't sure I was ready for what would happen next. The message from my dad lingered in my mind for days. "We won't forget this." It was a simple threat, but the weight behind it felt like 1,000 pounds. They were furious, but I was done. I had made my decision. There was no going back now. The silence continued for a while. Every call and message I ignored only fueled their fire. My family was waiting for me to cave, waiting for me to come crawling back, apologizing for the mistake I had made. But I didn't budge. I wouldn't. The longer I resisted, the more my resolve hardened. Then came the moment that shattered everything. It was a Saturday evening when I received an unexpected phone call. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me it was important. I hesitated for a moment, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered. "James, it's Aunt Linda." Her voice was soft, almost too calm. "We need to talk." I felt a chill run down my spine. Linda had always been the mediator, the one who tried to keep the peace, so to hear her speaking like this made me uneasy. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's your parents," she said. They're not doing well. They've been crying nonstop since you left. They've never been this upset before. Your mom, she's inconsolable." I could almost hear the faint tremor in her voice, and a part of me felt a brief pang of guilt. But it passed quickly. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. "You know what happened. You know why I did it." "I do," she sighed. "But you've got to understand. They're not handling it well, James. The family is turning on you. You're not just upsetting them. You're upsetting everyone. This is bigger than just the vacation." Her words hit harder than I expected. It was true. My parents weren't just upset with me. They had turned the entire family against me. They were playing the victim, painting me as the ungrateful child who didn't care about family, about loyalty. And in the process, they were poisoning everyone's perception of me. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter as my anger flared up again. I had been used for so long, and now they were trying to guilt me into coming back, trying to make me feel responsible for their misery. "I'm not going back," I said firmly, my voice now steady and unwavering. "I'm done. I've done enough for them. For all of you. It's not my responsibility anymore. Not even if they cry or yell or try to manipulate me. I'm not their savior." There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear Aunt Linda breathing, probably trying to figure out what to say next. But I didn't want to hear it. I was done. "I understand," she finally said, though her tone was strained. "But don't think this is over. Family doesn't forget something like this. You'll lose them all if you continue down this path." I hung up before she could say anything else. I stared at my phone, the screen going dark in my hand. My chest was tight, my heart racing. The guilt tried to creep back in, but I pushed it away. I had made my choice. I had to stand by it. The next few weeks were a blur of missed calls, angry messages, and more guilt trips. My parents sent letter after letter, each one more desperate than the last. They wrote about how I was ruining my future, how I would regret abandoning them, how they were disappointed in me. But with every letter, every phone call, I grew stronger. And then, one day, as I was getting ready to leave for work, I received a message from my mom that changed everything. It was short, but it hit me like a punch to the gut. "James, we've been hearing things. We're not just disappointed in you anymore. We're done. Don't come back. Don't try to contact us. We're cutting ties. For good." The finality of it hit me like a wave. They were really going through with it. They had crossed the line. This wasn't just about a vacation anymore. It was about their control over me, their expectations, their manipulation. They had chosen their path, and I had chosen mine. For a moment, I stood frozen, unsure of what to feel. Relief? Sadness? Anger? All of it, I suppose. But most of all, I felt free. I spent the next few weeks distancing myself from the wreckage. I focused on my work, my own life, and even started to make new connections. I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I was no longer defined by their toxic expectations, no longer trapped by their neediness and manipulation. But as the months went by, the fallout from my decision became clearer. It wasn't just my parents who were angry anymore. It was everyone. The phone calls, the texts, the passive-aggressive comments from family members, they never stopped. My aunts, uncles, cousins, and even some friends from the past tried to guilt me into coming back. They told me that I had broken the family, that I was selfish for not putting them first. But through it all, I held firm. I wasn't going to be their doormat anymore. I wasn't going to apologize for standing up for myself, for not letting them drain me dry anymore. I knew I was in for a long road, and I had no idea what would happen next. Would they really cut me off forever? Would they ever come to their senses? I didn't know. But one thing was certain. I had taken the first step toward freedom, and I wasn't looking back. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments.